It's, we'll bring this workshop to order for May 14th, 2019, and the chair is going to find good cause to rearrange the agenda amendments. Comprehensive facility assessment was going to be on the last workshop. We didn't get around to it. People have come from out of town for that, and so we're going to take that first, and then number second, we're going to talk about a possible agreement for construction of driveway for Barbara A. Harvey Elementary, and then 3, King Middle School property discussion, and then we'll have number 4 will be update on the Suncoast campaign for grade level reading, and 5, construction update, and that'll be it for workshop to get us warmed up for the meeting tonight. Let me kind of, what the change here is, we're going to go ahead with comprehensive facility assessment first. We're been requested to put the matter concerning Barbara Harvey Elementary, which was 5, a little bit further up, and the chair finds good cause to do that. I understand that a representative of Neil has some other commitments later on this afternoon, so we're giving that a bump. So, with that being said, may I ask that Jane Dreger, are you going to lead the discussion concerning the comprehensive facility assessment? We are blessed to have you here.
Chair Minor, I'm sorry. We need to start with the audit committee update under reports and presentations first.
Okay. I apologize. We're going to have the audit update here. Thank you very much, updater. Okay.
Good afternoon, everyone. The Audit Committee had a meeting on April 25th. For the most part, our meeting was about the sales surtax report that we are in the process of finalizing. We've literally been working on this for nearly a year. As you know, with the referendum, the community supported the district in having the surtax for certain specified items that were in that referendum, and we are being very cautious that anything that the district has spent the money on is in fact tied back to that wording. We have asked the district to remove a few items because we don't believe they're in the spirit. But we expect that that is being taken care of now. The final edits are being done, and our anticipation is that you will get this report from us in June. And going forward, because we are defining terms, being very clear about what is and is not acceptable. We've had a number of communications back and forth with the staff and with bond counsel. We think going forward, it'll be pretty clear for the next 15 years as to what is and is not permitted. We also have some suggestions for you about the in-house internal auditor in terms of policy 6835. I believe it was Ms. Messenger at one of our meetings who questioned whether that policy should be revised if there is an in-house internal auditor, since it describes the audit function as being a contracted function. And so we have some suggested wording to make sure that it would cover some duties being performed in-house, and also that the individual would report to the board, adhere to the appropriate standards. We also would like to clarify some language about the process for selecting the contractor, because there's been some questions about exactly how smooth and clean that language is in the policy, so we'd like to clean all of that up. We're not here today to actually talk about those changes. You do have on your agenda this evening, as part of the consent agenda, to simply approve the posting that there will be a discussion. I believe it's scheduled for June 25th at your meeting that day. We have another audit committee meeting before then, and we will write up some suggestions and present those to you as possible edits to that particular policy. We also just wanted to mention there were some numbers thrown out at our last meeting about the contracts for the internal auditor. There was a unified gasp in the room from us, because the numbers just didn't represent what we understand to be true, so we have done our checking. The current contract for the internal auditor is $349,400. That is $89,100 less than last fiscal year, because for that particular fiscal year we had asked for an increase because of ERP, and then we cut those hours back for this school year. We expect that most of that will be spent. There is still $60,000 left that could be billed, but that's for 2 months, May and June. We expect most of that will be spent. The other comment made was that there have been times when the contract has gone over its maximum amount. We went back and researched this. We can find no evidence of this anywhere. The internal auditor, through the audit committee, is held to the contract terms. You know that I come to you periodically and say we want to adjust some things based on how the work is progressing, but we always remember to say to you, it is still within the contract limits. We have advocated that this district always do its contracts with a not to exceed clause. That's how these are written, and we will not permit it to exceed that amount. And our commitment is not to have to come back to you to ask you for more money before the year is over. We also do have some suggestions in terms of next year, which we are proceeding with. We have one more interview to finish. We know that with the in-house internal auditor, there's been some conversation about reducing the expenditures for the contracted person. We're a little bit concerned about that because there needs to be time for building the in-house audit function. We are asking the internal auditor to actually mentor this individual and work to build that function. And we also know that what has been proposed in our discussion so far with the board is our responsibilities for that person initially that are not currently done by internal auditing. The school accounts, that's done by the external auditor. And so that function, if it's moved in-house, certainly there's some money there that you would save. We're also looking to this person to do liaison work, as was described, where they would actually work with the internal auditor who is contracted to make sure documents are pulled, to smooth the way for getting information, so that we don't have some of the tensions that we've had over the past in trying to get information in a timely manner. So that's smooth, it's taken care of, we can proceed with the audits, as well as to monitor action plans. And we think that's something that is desperately needed in the school district. You've had 3 big audit reports just in the last 6 weeks or so. You've had the Auditor General's report, you've had the ERP report from CRI, you've had the Agitech report from CRI. There are numerous recommendations in those reports, in addition to all the IT recommendations. Tracking that is a challenge, and while the audit committee periodically asks the district to tell us where they are with things, we really believe that someone within the district, and this would be perfect for an in-house internal auditor, to track those action plans, work with the staff to make sure the work is progressing on time, and then be able to come back to you, certainly on a quarterly basis, perhaps more often when you have something like ERP, which is so pressing, so that you are informed and kept up to date, and the public knows that these things are being addressed. Our ultimate goal is that all of the findings are corrected, all of the recommendations are addressed, and there are no repeats. And if we could start to remove some of those findings and some of those recommendations, then you'll see there's a smaller and smaller number. Things tend to work a little bit better. There'll be fewer findings in the future, and that's what we're trying to all accomplish. So we would urge you to consider that for the time being, at least for the next year, we'd like to keep the internal audit function for the contract where it is now, looking forward to over the years as there's more transition to certainly adjusting that. And the last thing is basically a repeat for you from April 23rd. The audit committee considers this to be very important, so that even though it's been said out loud before, we talked about it again at our April 25th meeting. We truly do believe that it is imperative for this district to have public conversations about contracts that you're doing, about audit reports, about these kinds of fiscal challenges and needs and actions that you are taking, so that the community is fully informed of what's going on, and that you yourselves have an opportunity to discuss this with the staff so that you are crystal clear on how the money is being spent. Especially these come up when you have a contract that you're asked to renew or change the scope on. We really think it's important that you are informed and that there is a public conversation about these things. As I've said already, action plans, whenever there are audit findings and recommendations, are critical so that we can monitor your work, the work that's being done, and you are absolutely assured that corrections are being made and things are being fixed. This district made tremendous progress over the last 5 or 6 years in managing its fiscal affairs and getting things straight. We don't want that to slip. We've had some serious challenges with ERP, which is raising some concerns because so much of this had to be manually done this year. we want to make sure that the district continues the progress you've made over all these years, that we don't slip back to a time when people were questioning your finances or uncertain that they were accurately accounted for. And so we think greater public conversation, having public reports about the actions, what is being done to fix this stuff is critically important, and we would recommend that to you very strongly.
Fellow board members, any questions of the chair of the audit committee? Not seeing a lot of them.
Thank you very much.
We thank you very much for a very complete report. We look forward to your suggestions about the in-house auditor and some specifics about change of the language in your charter. And I guess that you were talking about the benefit of in-house taking away what outside internal auditor has been doing, things like when we asked them to review our homeschooling records and that thing, that would probably be a good thing for an in-house internal auditor, or at least to check on to seeing it's being done and kept up regularly in all of our schools that are applicable. So anyway, thank you very much for the progress you're making, and we appreciate all the volunteer hours that your highly competent staff, or not staff, cohorts are doing. So, okay, well, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now, I'm looking over to the clerk, but I guess do we go now to public comment? Okay, public comment. I turn the gavel over to our distinguished Vice Chair, Gina Messenger.
All right, I'll just go quickly through our typical spiel. Public comment is not an open forum to discuss matters unrelated to education, to support or oppose candidates for public office, or to engage in commercial speech attempting to sell a service or product to the school board or public. Also, public comment is not an open forum to attack individual school system employees or board members. Any such complaints should be submitted in writing to the superintendent for appropriate handling. Finally, this is not an open forum for addressing issues involving individual students. Because of privacy concerns, such issues should be submitted in writing to the superintendent for appropriate handling. Each speaker is allowed 3 minutes to address the board. This is a business meeting of the school board, and the public expects that we conduct it in an orderly, efficient, effective, and dignified manner. We request that speakers keep this in mind when making your comments. We also request that the audience keep that in mind and not demonstrate approval or disapproval of what a speaker has said by clapping or booing. The board appreciates the public's input and will listen attentively, consider each comment, and usually will not respond, enter into debate, or answer questions during comments on agenda items or during the public comments section. And with that, I will start with Mr. Ron Schneider and then Thomas Panasini. Ron Schneider. Okay, Thomas Panasini. Mr. Gauze. And during workshops, it is only one public comment section.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members, Ms. Saunders. My name is Bob Gauze with Gauze & Associates. I represent the West Manatee Fire District. I'm asking for a few extra minutes if I can, please. I think you've already received a presentation from your staff for the property at the King Middle Annex, and I don't know if you have that up where you can see it, but let me just show you.
Okay, thank you. The chair's graciously given you 2 more minutes, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. The sketch you've got is just a conceptual sketch. The fire department, you had a workshop, I think, on this issue previously. I don't think any decision was made. Mr. Wagner graciously placed this as an agenda item on this workshop to try and be able to, A, provide you a little bit more information and hopefully determine if there's any interest on the part of the school district to consider allowing the West Manatee Fire District to purchase some property over at the King Middle Annex. It's property that was purchased by the school district, I want to say in 2007 or 2008, and was a former tennis academy. And various things it's been used for tennis courts and stuff like that. A bathroom facility was built just at the north end, at the south end of it. The fire district is looking to have a new place for their administrative headquarters. They get a lot of call volume, a lot of services in this area. Obviously, this is sort of central to their location, and they're looking at various sites for the construction of new administrative offices, and the possibility of stationing an emergency vehicle there to handle some of the emergencies that they're starting to deal with, the call volume. The King Middle School site is really, quite frankly, their preferred location if they can, if the school district is interested in working with them on it. I know the district has worked with them in the past. I was actually sitting here looking at the fire engine. I think the last time I was in this room with the fire district, West Manatee Fire District, it was when they were giving us giving the district a fire engine. So it's interesting to be here on this side this time. But the sketch you see is just that, it's a sketch. It hasn't been worked out completely yet. The idea is that the fire district would utilize the existing entrance for the property. The important thing for the fire district is they do not want to build their administrative headquarters in the flood zone, so they would want to be located outside the flood zone, which is why it's located in the northeast corner. I know that there was some thoughts that they were wanting to be in the northwest. That's not correct. And so I talked to Mike Penley this morning. Mike, very gracious to chat with him. We talked a little bit, and I think he's actually got that current sketch in his PowerPoint. But you know, that's really what we're here about. We think that it's potentially a very good marriage between the school district and the fire district. It places, you know, a positive. A negative for the school district is, you know, you're putting something in there that prevents you from using that corner of the property for something else down the road. A positive is you're putting a very complementary neighbor to King Middle School. You're providing, you know, a building full of first responders in close proximity to that school. And potentially you may have an emergency vehicle also stationed there. So those are things we have to work out. But before we start going through the process of doing that due diligence, first we have to know if the district is even willing to consider the possibility in a positive light. So, and that's why we're here today. And we appreciate Mr. Wagner and your staff for putting it on your agenda. Thank you. And I'm here to answer any questions that I can answer.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Board members, any questions? Okay, thank you. Mr. Gauze, any other?
Yes, Mr. Neal.
Okay.
Hello. John Neal, at your pleasure. I'm here actually on an agenda item. I was unaware that I would speak, but I'm here for the board's benefit. I think that from our part, we communicated with staff primarily, and then somehow in the handoff, I think there's been some confusion or some miscommunication, so I'm here to solve that. Our intent is to build a north-south road connecting Moccasin Wallow Road with both our property and your school, provide an alternative connection to your school that I think has been promised and is probably needed based on the arrangement of the Barbara Harvey Elementary. We had previously talked about a east-west road, but I can't provide an easement for that road at this time because I don't have a use for that road, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry, I don't have a use for that property, Mr. Chairman, at this time, but that's something that we could talk about in the future once I have a use and an understanding of how my property will be utilized. So aside from that, I will sit back down unless you have any specific questions for me, or maybe during the item also.
Well, thank you for coming. Any questions, you know, from board members?
Well, Mr. Chair, is now the time, or should we wait till the item?
Yeah,
Well, are you going to be, I've moved up the item,
you did.
you know,
I've-
for your convenience,
Yes,
actually.
well, thank you very much for that. I have a 3 o'clock down the road, but I also intend to come back for a meeting this evening. So if we don't get to it, I'm happy to.
I don't know if we can, I'm inclined to think that we're not going to be, through these other things, the comprehensive facility before 3 o'clock. I'm going to look to the clerk. What is our schedule?
We had budgeted 45 minutes for the facilities assessment.
Well, that would put us after 3 o'clock. All right,
Mr. Go.
Mr. Minor, I just
Yeah.
have one question.
yeah,
for you now.
Board
There might be
Member
a time
Kennedy, yeah.
If memory serves, this is an item that was, this was on our previous board agenda. I believe it got pulled because there was some more due diligence that the chair was seeking. So, Mr. Neal, you feel at this point, on your end, you're confident that everything is ready to go for the agenda item, and regardless of the east-west road, and I know you guys will work with us down the road if that road ever comes in, but for this annex piece to create this drive for Barbara Harvey Elementary, you feel like it's ready to go, and
It is. Mr. Kennedy, from the last time you've seen it to now, and Mr. Dye can correct, initially, you were going to convey the property to us, we were going to build the road, and then provide the easement. We've sort of reversed that. We're going to build it now on your property, and at the successful completion, you'll provide the conveyance. It doesn't matter for us. We're happy to do it however this board feels is appropriate, and I think that's how we've left it.
okay, I just want to make sure before we go on. Thank you.
Board Member Hopes, you had a question?
Yeah, a couple. I think that, this item's been delayed for too long. We have a need for this road to be built and ready for use August 1st when we open up the school. Many of us have worked on this since the first town hall where we identified a problem with the entrance to that school. We've worked through the issues. I intend to make a motion to add it to the agenda tonight so we can make a decision, so that we can move forward. Chair Trace from the County Commission worked on it. Vice Chair Messenger worked on this with the community. I worked on it with the community. You've weighed in, and we have a cooperative partner who has committed to have this road built, and regardless of this east-west road, which was envisioned a year ago to connect to the Fort Hamer extension, which is very delayed in that stretch. The Fort Hamer extension has not been approved in that area. Therefore, the east-west road is immaterial to getting the access to this elementary school so that we can not have all the traffic blocking the entrance to Copperstone. And so I appreciate the work that Neal Communities is doing, that John Neal is doing, and I have every bit of confidence that when the Fort Hamer extension is built and Neal Communities has identified a use for that property, that if it makes sense to accommodate an east-west entrance so that those communities can have access without going on Moccasin Wallow, that they will be right at the table with us to collaborate and to partner with us should that time arise. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Thank you, Board Member Hopes. I have some questions.
Sir.
This agreement contemplates a driveway. That language is used in the proposed development agreement. A length of 370 feet. Is that correct?
Exactly correct.
And it would be 50 feet wide. Is that correct?
A two-lane roadway is sufficient, so I'm going to look at the plan. Is it 50?
Well, it would have two lanes that are 12-foot wide, and there would contemplates that there be curbs of 2 feet for curbs on each side. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And it contemplates 4 feet of sodding on each side after the curb, correct?
Correct.
And after that siding, there's a sidewalks on each side of 5 foot wide. Is that correct?
Proposed a sidewalk on one side.
Well, it seems like, the picture I saw had it on each side, but
Okay. Proposed
if you add all that together, it comes up to 50 feet after you add in the sod that goes to the side of the outside of the sidewalk, correct?
It was proposed to be a 50 feet parcel of land.
Right, by 370. Now, my concern is with the safety of the students and the traffic. And I don't see in any of the agreement that I've gone through, I've tried to go through carefully, anything in the agreement itself that, reflects what you just told us the proposal contemplates. It has graphs and exhibits that have that information on it, but the agreement doesn't explicitly incorporate those proposals.
Mr. Chairman,
Or correct me if I'm wrong, if it's in the proposed agreement.
there's an exhibit in the agreement which identifies the different parts. I understand from you today, I hadn't heard previously that you wanted sidewalk on both sides, but everything that you've said regarding sod and road width and dimensional width is all true. The one factor that I want to understand a little bit better as to sidewalk is if you, I'm going to have a picture in front of me. I don't know if I can put it, I don't know how to project it in any different way. But if you put a sidewalk on the east side, it means that any student who's traveling on that won't have a direct crosswalk to get back into the school property because it's on the commercial side. So therefore, we've only shown sidewalk on the west side of the road. So there would be a crosswalk along Moccasin Wallow and a direct access to the school. Your school property is also on the west side of this road, or at least that's where the kids would be headed, to the building on the west side.
Thank you. My concern is you have 370 feet going along the east side, in property that's owned by, for shorthand, Neil right now, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what precludes access from anybody on that boundary, the 370 feet, from having access into this driveway, which really becomes the Neil driveway on the execution of the deed, correct?
That's right. Our interest is, of course, to provide access, additional access to our own property. We have access along Moccasin Wallow, but this would be an alternative access. So there would be nothing that would impede general traffic from utilizing this road.
One point,
except
Mr.
for-
Chairman.
Except for the gate.
Excuse me,
Except for
Mr.
the gate onto your
One
property.
point.
I'm sorry, you're not recognized. Mr. Neal, my point is, for 370 feet along this road, what is in the development agreement that precludes anyone on the east side from accessing into the driveway? Do we have a problem?
I'm not understanding. Are you saying that prevents access into the school facility, or are you saying?
No, into this driveway that's being talked about.
No, it would be our driveway under which you had an easement, under our agreement. Say that again.
Yeah, the
This would be
driveway
our
become,
driveway under which you have an easement for access.
well,
And we're providing $250,000 in consideration
okay.
for that right.
Well, let me repeat my question. We all agree that after, the deed is signed in accordance with the agreement, that becomes Neil property, okay? With the school district having a non-exclusive right of easement for pedestrian and vehicular traffic from Moccasin Wallow Road, all the way down to where we have the bus loop,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, what my concern is, in that 370 feet from Moccasin Wallow Road down to the bus loop, on the east side, which, is original, Neil property, right?
Yes, sir.
What is there in the agreement that says there isn't access along that whole 370 feet onto this roadway.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
No,
You
you're
have a
not.
drawing. You have a drawing. If I may help you,
Well, I don't think you're being helpful right now. Thank you. I'm asking for a response, from Mr.
Well,
Neal.
I think I've responded, Mr. Chairman. There is nothing in the agreement which precludes access on our, what would be our road from anything else. But from a safety standard, this was originally presented to us as a bus, as access for your buses and large transportation, delivery vehicles and so forth. So we hadn't really ever thought of it as a high pedestrian access road. You can have large vehicles with low sight lanes, and I think that was the purpose of taking buses out of your general loop along in front of the Copperstone neighborhood. I thought that was the original plan. Now, of course, I don't know how you can preclude.
Mr. Neal, I might be able to help. I may be able to help.
You're out of order, Mr. Hoax.
So, is that a sufficient answer to your?
No, it isn't.
Okay, well, I don't know how to answer it any differently, Mr. Chairman. There is nothing in the agreement which precludes our traffic from utilizing our road.
That wasn't my question, sir.
All right. Can you ask
No,
it in a different
no
way?
question
so I-
about that. That Neal, has access to what becomes their driveway, all the way from Moccasin Wallow Road to going south to wherever it ends. No question, and that isn't my question, though.
I'm misunderstanding your question, sir.
Okay. I'm talking about coming from the east onto the road. What precludes anyone who has a lot of business from, going west and getting on this driveway to go up to Moccasin Wallow Road?
Well,
What is in the agreement that precludes that?
do you understand, Tom? I don't know how.
I think the question is, is there anything that precludes?
I think I understand how he thinks.
Okay. I know that Moccasin Wallow Road is designed so that this is a right in, right out. So you can't drive west from this alley.
That's not my question.
Looking for connections here.
Okay, well, Unless
Are
you can ask
you-
the question a different way,
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I don't
Are
understand.
you opposed to any provision in an agreement between the district and Neal to preclude that?
Preclude what?
From anyone on the east side of the road, having a right to go out, on the east side of the driveway, I should say, pulling out and getting on this driveway to go north or go south.
Okay. No. If we're spending $250,000 to build the road, and you would be the beneficiary, or at least your buses and traffic would be the beneficiary, we cannot limit our traffic on your road because it becomes our road. And we need to utilize it for our commercial traffic, whether, I'll just say, Tom and I are in discussions with a daycare center that would be on the east side of this road. Daycare center which services the children both too young to go to your school and for after school services. So we think that that's a good idea to have that connection in that place. But even if we could preclude, I don't know how that we could limit traffic in our ingress and egress to our property under this plan.
Under your plan, there's no limitation.
No.
So every 20, 30 feet, there could be a driveway going out into the driveway, correct, sir?
I see, every 20 to 30 feet. We
Or
haven't-
40
we
feet,
haven't defined-
there could be many, cuts through to this driveway from Neal property, from people that you sell the property to, or you keep, or you rent. And that's my concern.
I see.
That's my concern. There's nothing in the agreement right now.
Mr. Chairman, if
Mr.
you would, if you would
Board
allow
Member
the
Hope.
board to have a discussion with you, I might be able to help you understand. I gave you a drawing. Now, if you do not want to understand this, then tell me you don't want to understand, and I will be quiet until this issue is past us.
I do want to understand.
Okay.
And I'm getting answers from him, and you're out of order, sir.
But he has told you multiple times, he has given you the answer. He's asked you to ask the question differently. You are not asking it differently, Mr. Chairman. Would you like to better understand this issue?
Mr. Hope, you're terribly out of
A
order.
doctor would be fine.
Well, I'm a doctor, too.
Well,
Okay. Board Member Kennedy.
Thank you. I'd like to take this a different direction. We are currently in public comment of a workshop, and this is becoming a regular meeting item. The way that I see this is that we have an item here which both Mr. Neal and his team, as he just told me, are ready to sign off on. We have district staff and superintendent who are ready to go. So my suggestion would be, instead of belaboring this in public comment, and if Mr. Hopes, Dr. Hopes, if I understand you correctly, you're going to make a motion to amend the agenda tonight to include this. Let us have this discussion at that time if the motion to amend the agenda does pass, which I think it will. So let's have this conversation then, because I think everybody in the room, except for one board member, is ready to go, and that's not the way this should work.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you.
I have one thing to say.
I believe,
Mr. Chairman, I
Mr.
had
Neal.
one conference with my associate Tom Panasini here, and in looking at the drawing, I think that we can do with two, a limitation of two, and I'm happy to admit that, two connections to the east, not unlimited, two connections.
well, I understood you a moment ago, to say that the proposed agreement does not have any restrictions whatsoever of connecting, existing Neal property into this roadway.
Yes, it doesn't. It does have an exhibit.
No,
We haven't,
there isn't anything in the agreement, correct, sir? Okay.
there's nothing in the agreement that
Okay.
precludes our use of the road. No.
Thank you. Now, in this proposed agreement, it starts talking driveway and then talks roadway, and it's hard to tell. There's a lot of scrivener's errors that don't make a lot of sense in it on careful reading. I have some serious concerns about the safety of how it's written right now. And I understand you got to take off. Something's more important than this right now, to be around for when it's called up.
I'm here, but
Okay. Well, I think it's been validly pointed out, this is public comment, and I was going to give the opportunity to respond to, questions I've had. You've answered one and established my understanding of reading the agreement, that there's no inhibition right now in the proposed agreement limiting access from Neal property existing going east onto this roadway. And I think that's a significant impairment, adding traffic onto that roadway and impairing the safety of the agreement. That's how I see it right now. Now, okay, Mr. Golden?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
I just have one question.
yes, sir.
I think I just heard you say that you all would be willing to modify the agreement to
Just
have two egress, ingress points along the east side of this 370-foot stretch. So apparently you all have not done any design, any designation as to how you're going to use that property. Would that be fair to say? Okay.
Correct.
Okay. Would you be willing to present to us a configuration that would allow for no more than two egress, ingress points along that 370-foot stretch?
Sure.
I don't know what other objections may arise, but as it relates to that objection, would you be willing to do that?
Yes, Mr. Golden, of course, we haven't engineered it. We're running on our cost.
I'm not concerned about the engineering. I know that the engineers are not going to do anything that is not permissible under the engineering law. What I'm concerned with is what the chair is concerned with, the safety of the children and the safety of the people who are going to be going along this road trying to get to the school.
Yes,
And so all I'm asking is, as a consideration of that, can we have egress, ingress limited to 2 points along that 370-foot stretch? Would you commit to that?
yes, sir.
All right. Good.
The drawings and reflect a curb on both sides of this roadway, correct?
Yes,
This driveway?
yes.
In this, drawing and everything, it doesn't include any reference to any cut-throughs, for, through that curb, does it?
But
It shows one.
It shows one today.
At the end, at the very end. That's one access that you have. And by the terms of the drawing, that's the only access that's recognized, but it's not put in words in the development agreement, as Mr. Neal has just confirmed.
Right, the agreement references the exhibit.
Yes,
Just the drawing.
but there's nothing, explicitly in the agreement that says as set forth in the drawing, correct?
Right, not in-
Okay, and that's my point. I think that it should be, in the agreement, what are put forth as drawings, so that the expectations rising, from looking at these drawings, is met by by the agreement, which continues, to anybody who buys that property. I think it ought to be a recordable limitation on the amount of entrance and exits to traffic that primarily is going to be buses. I'm trying to limit the amount of traffic on there for the safety of the kids. And that's one reason why I think if now, may not happen, but I think the idea of saying that the school district and buses or whatever would never have any right, pursuant to the agreement, to go on any road from Fort Hamer, over to, our driveway, even though, Neil, controls this. Neil, in terms of not, as referred to in this agreement, could at any time, say, we're going to have a private roadway, and it's going over to our property that we just got from the school district to go on this driveway all the way up to Moccasin Wallow Road. And I don't think that, helps the safety of our children. And the reaction to even the school district having a right, to go on, if it's ever made, over to, Fort Hamer Road, doesn't make a lot of sense, and it doesn't even seem fair. If we're going to give you, this property, which I think is worth a heck of a lot, and then we can't use that for connections, maybe to Fort Hamer Road if it comes through, and right now, it's all this access allowed, from the east side of the roadway, to the detriment of the safety of the kids. I think this agreement needs a lot of work. I don't think it's ready, for the safety of our children. Thank you very much, and you're welcome to come back when it comes up on the agenda. Okay. Do we have any other public comments?
That concludes public
Oh,
comment.
okay, that's extended public comment. Okay. Okay. I think we're ready for construction. Okay, okay, facilities report. Okay, Jane?
Thank you. Well, good afternoon.
Hi, Jane.
Lighten it up. I'm here today to introduce Jacobs Engineering, who did our comprehensive facility assessment. They have assessed 34% of the public schools in the state of Florida, including Duval County, Orange County, Miami-Dade, and Broward counties. In the past 2 years, Jessica Goodell and her teams have assessed over 500 schools. They have a dedicated assessment team who lays eyes on every one of our square foot. So a little bit of the history is that we ran the legal ad for the request for qualifications in the Bradenton Herald in July of 2018. We got the RFQs, 10 firms submitted. We shortlisted 3 firms in August. The 3 firms were interviewed in September, and we brought to you the authorization to negotiate with the highest ranked firm, which was Jacobs, on September 25th. And our agreement with them was approved by you in October, and then we went to work. So what we did is we collected data from a wide variety of existing sources. Our Florida inventory of schoolhouse files, maintenance work order histories, maintenance capital inventories, school capacity and enrollment data, as well as a review of our plans from our plans room information. We interviewed maintenance operations and construction services staff. We performed a pilot assessment on Canaan Elementary to ensure that the data points we wanted were gathered and were appropriate. We reviewed and commented on that draft report, and then walkthroughs of all of our facilities were scheduled with our principals, who did a great job of making sure that Jacobs staff got in, got access, and got everything they need while they were there. We scheduled those walkthroughs, and we added the 3 new schools that we have yet to open, which I hope to talk to you about a little later today, into our inventory to start their life cycle clocks ticking. So what we have today is the first glimpse at the high-level data, an overall state of our schools. So I've been in the district for 15 years and have advocated for getting this type of data for 10 years, so I'm really excited. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Jacobs Project Manager, Jessica Goodell. Yep. They have the hard.
Oh, they have it?
They have the color copies.
Oh, so I don't have to project it?
You can project.
Oh, there it is. There we go. Here we go. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. It's been a real pleasure to work here in Manatee County. Let's see if I can get your present. And as Jane mentioned, she kind of gave you the stats on what me and my team do. I've been working in Florida a lot for the last 2 years, so it's really exciting. This is actually our first West Coast. And so we really like being in Florida, and my team's really appreciated doing it in February and not June like I made them last year. So really quick, what is a facility condition assessment? A facility condition assessment evaluates the general health of your facilities. When we go through the facilities with our teams, they're looking for what the condition is of all your building systems, mechanical, electrical, interior, your roofs. They want to identify deficiencies, so what's currently wrong with your facilities, and also they want to forecast those needs that are going to come up in the future. We don't want to not calculate a cost for a roof replacement that's coming up in 3 or 4 years just because your roof doesn't need replacement now. Those are important things to plan for as you move forward. So we prioritize all of our deficiencies. We calculate cost estimates. It's a budgetary cost. It's the cost to kind of get work done. It's not an actual scope like an engineer or architecture would do. It's an idea to get a calculation of investment that you need over the next 10 years. And then finally, we calculate a facility condition index, which I'll talk to you about later, but this is a way to compare dissimilar facilities across your district. So all of our deficiencies are actionable, and we use them. You want them to support your projects as you move forward. In your database, you have over 3,000 deficiencies, over 22,000 life cycle items. We visited 58 campuses, of which you have 694 buildings. So it's a pretty substantial portfolio. We use a very deliberate and standardized process. We had, I believe, 4 teams in the field. So we have a couple of different guys looking at your facilities. We want to do it as best we can, like one person looked at all your facilities. So we have a real standardized approach for them to collect the information so that everyone's collecting very similar information and not kind of going off the rails. So we have a real process to keep that online. Along with the facility condition index, we also did security upgrades. Now this, you guys don't have any standards at the time, so this was sort of an idea to kind of see what you could do to your facilities and start budgeting for things that may come up in the future. They were easily identifiable. This has nothing to do with policies and procedures. It's the physical structure of your facilities. We talked to some of the folks in Jacobs that are experts in this and came up with some kind of industry best practices. So we identified easily and correctable things like full perimeter fencing, secure entrances or vestibules, and you make sure there's cameras and things like that along the facility, along with some other items. So with all that said, what does Manatee County have? You have over 7 million square feet of permanent facilities, just over 200,000 square feet of portables, so not a lot of portables, a substantial amount of walkways, totaling almost 8 million square feet that your teams are managing for your district. The average age of your campus is about 29 years. This doesn't really take into account any major renovations. This is based on the year that it was built. You have a lot of elementary schools. I think it's about 40% of your district is elementary schools on an area-wide basis. So really a great kind of balance of portfolio across your district. So what did we see when we were there? The first thing we need to do is prioritize your deficiencies. Nobody has all the money in the world to execute everything that we find, so we want to prioritize these things. We generally prioritize from 1 through 5, priority 1s being the most important, things like fire alarm. All of your security upgrades did land in this priority 1 category. Priority 2, you start getting into roof and mechanical. By the time you're at priority 5, you're at things like carpet, vinyl tile, things that aren't that important to keep a facility moving. Generally, districts like to focus on priorities 1, 2s, and 3s. Those are kind of your cool, safe, and dry items that keep the school running and keep students and teachers happy. So for priority 1 deficiencies, we identified 6.6 million. Most of these are related to the security upgrades, and then some of these are related to fire and security alarm replacements. Priority 2 is a significant amount. I think it's your largest priority. It's about 37%. And these are things like roof replacements, doors, windows, and mechanical equipment. And mechanical equipment and roofs tend to cost a lot of money, so that's not surprising. Just a little bit of focus on your fire and life safety and your security upgrades, because that's pretty, important to everybody. A total of fire and life safety. Now, this is a system, a building system we call fire and life safety. So it's things like fire alarms, security alarms, and that was a total of $3.7 million. And it's primarily some fire alarm replacements. It wasn't a significant deficiency across your district. And then the security upgrades. Most of this is an electronic locking system. The idea behind this is that there would be a single button somewhere within the school that if something happened, someone could push that button and lock the school down if it was needed to be. So that's quite an expense, and that's why it does take up about half of that finding. There's also about $1 million in vestibules that we identified. And again, these are budgetary costs. Every school is going to cost a little bit different for that vestibule. We weren't out there designing vestibules for you, but it's a budgetary cost. And also we found some schools that need a little work on their full perimeter fencing.
Mr. Minor?
Yes. Board Member Kennedy?
Thank you.
Yeah.
I just have kind of a timing question. You all started working in October of last year.
The kickoff meeting was October 30th, and then we got in the field. We did the pilot in December, and we started at the end of January in the field.
Oh, okay, so that helps a little bit. So is there, so this is just kind of the snapshot that you took. The reason I ask is because all during last school year, we were doing security and fencing and camera
Right.
upgrades. And it's probably a negligible amount, but your team was visiting the campus, and then our construction services folks came in behind you and then made a correction that,
If it was already funded and maintenance was already working on it, we included it as if it were new. That was part of collecting the maintenance inventory.
okay, so that would,
Projects that they were already working on.
okay, so that would be,
This is, at this point, this is still left to do.
okay.
And the district had a chance to review our findings before we published it, so if there were some cameras or something we collected, they could cross it off the
They
list and we
put
could remove it from the
installed.
database.
So that's all covered. Okay, that's what I
And
wanted
then,
to
and if you've made changes since February or March when we finished, the district will receive a database, so they can go in and update those findings over time.
Thank you. Thank you, Dave.
Mr. Chair.
Anything else?
Yeah, Board Member Golden.
Yes, sir. Thank you, ma'am. Is there a cross-reference in your report between the priorities that you've established and the ages of the entities that need these priority updates?
The priorities and the age aren't really related. It's the priority is the impact to the facility to get it done. So to do your business is to educate students and keep teachers happy and hopefully not complaining. So the priority has to do with your ability to keep the facility open. So priority 1s are going to be your roof and your fire and life safety. So those 1s, 2s, and 3s are warm, cool, safe, and dry. So you're keeping your kids cool, safe, and dry. The age of the facility would come in, or really the system would come into play when they assess whether that needs to be replaced now or sometime in the future. So say your roof is 20 years old and the assessor gets up there and it's in pretty good condition. He thinks it has 5 years left. He's going to say, it's okay, you've got 5 years left on this. And then there will be a cost in year 5 for that roof, which is likely a priority 2 item. Does that help?
Well, I don't want to contend with you because you're the expert, but what I do want to know is there not a difference between a decision to be made to replace a roof on a building that's 20 years old as opposed to a building, and you said the average is 29 years.
Right.
So that means that somewhere there's a 58-year-old building that may need a roof.
Right.
And so my question is there a cross-reference between not just the averages, but between the actual ages of the buildings and the priorities that we establish, or is there any relationship?
There's not, because that roof that's 50 years old, it would be considered deficient, and it would be budgeted for a deficiency and need replacement now. And so this sort of establishes buckets of money, so that 50-year-old, mechanical system roof, and it's deficient, it's not working, or we have experts that look at this. These guys look at facilities all the time, and they determine that roof is on its last leg. They're going to say it's deficient and should be replaced now and be budgeted for replacement now. Same thing with a carpet. So that carpet's also 50 years old, and it should be budgeted and replaced. However, your roof's probably a lot more important than your carpet, right? So your roof's going to be a priority 2, whereas your carpet's priority 5. So when you start looking at the available funds that you have, you're going to invest in that priority 2 roof item before that deficient carpet item.
I appreciate that.
Am I answering the question?
No, not really.
Oh, I'm sorry. There's no cross-reference between age and priorities. They're independent of each other.
And I'm saying for a school that's been in existence for 40 years, we have to make a decision based on, not just on whether to replace the roof, but whether to rebuild a school or to close it down, which is more likely what I'm.
I think what maybe you're thinking of is that a 50-year-old school might be in worse condition than a younger school.
You
And
think?
it may not be the case because she had just include, in the inventory, it just includes the year that it originated, the year it was built. But Bashaw, for example, we just did a major renovation there. So right now it has a really low facility condition index because it looks, for all intents and purposes, like a brand new school. They went and assessed each piece, the condition of each piece of the building, not as it just purely relates to age. Did that answer your question a little better?
I think.
They don't always correlate. They could, but they might not always.
Let me see if I can say it this way. Aside from just the assessment of the physical condition of the property, given the fact that some of the properties have been improved, there are other considerations that go into deciding what establishes a priority in terms of what we are going to be doing. Not the priority in terms of what needs to be done, but the priority in terms of what's going to be most helpful to us in making a decision, given the fact that we don't have all the money.
Yeah, we'll be able to group those projects together based on the money we have, and we'll be able to bring to you, we know that these 8 schools are in the worst shape. Here's how much we think it's gonna cost for each of those 8, and then you all can talk about what makes the most sense.
That's the question.
Yeah,
I'm trying to-
she's gonna give us the information
To make decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is just information and what you gets used to make decisions based
Okay,
on.
and that prioritizing has not taken place
No.
yet?
No,
That's the question that I'm trying to ask, and I apologize.
This
just
is
data.
This is data.
just the information, high-level information.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Anything
Board
else?
Member Golden.
Okay. Just a little snapshot here of the deficiencies by school type. 40% of your school district, your portfolio is elementary schools, so the most amount of funding will likely be at your elementary schools. So that's a pretty good gut check on how our findings are coming out. A little more interesting fact is your cost per square foot kind of normalizes that big difference in areas between your middle and elementary schools. And your middle schools are actually almost $16.50 per square foot, whereas your middle schools are 13. So there's a higher concentration of costs at your middle schools than your elementary schools. It's not super significant, but just an interesting way to kind of visualize the data. Just a little highlight on some of your current deficiencies versus building systems. So you have your priorities across the top and your building systems down the left there. And you can see you have about 3.7 million in priority one of that 6.6 in that priority one. So a significant portion of that is going to be some of your security upgrades as well as fire alarm replacements. In priority two, your highest number is in roofing. This, I can probably guarantee this is almost all entirely different roofing replacements across your district. And then in priority three is your site items, which generally I don't see site items come up to the top, I was telling Jane, but this is mostly some asphalt replacements, parking replacements. Seems like you've taken a really good care of your facilities, and maybe asphalt's kind of been that last thing you get to, which was probably very understandable on how you prioritize your spending. So life cycle renewal. So we've talked a lot about what's broken now. So there's current deficiencies. There's what, if you had all the money in the world, you would fix today. While we're in the field, we also basically did a inventory in the loose term so that we can life cycle things into the future. And we've reflected here things that will, we anticipate to fail or need budgetary for replacement over the next 10 years. This is based on the service life of that piece of equipment or that finish, also based on what the assessor saw at the time. So maybe there is a boiler at a school that it's kind of on its last leg, but your team has taken a really great care of, and we think it can get a few more years out of it. It's going to get a few more years. Maybe there's a roof that just was a lemon. It's supposed to last 20 years. You're at 15, and the thing's just leaking and leaking. That was a current deficiency. So this is everything beyond today that you should budget for. And over the next 10 years, we identified $560 million in need to be considered over the next 10 years. All these things are also prioritized just like the deficiencies in the same fashion. Priority 1s, 2s, and 3s are your cool, safe, and dry. And you get to priority 4s and 5s, and you're kind of talking interior finishes. This can be important because maybe you have a fire alarm system. It's priority 1, but we anticipate it's going to fail maybe in a few years. But you want to move that up the chain in your budget because it's a fire alarm, and you don't want to worry about it failing. So that's where the decisions based on the data come in, where this is just data, and you'll make decisions later on based on the needs of the school, the needs of the district. And priority 2s, these are primarily air handlers and chillers. So again, your mechanical systems, keeping those students cool, safe, and dry. The highest items we found over the next 10 years will be your interior and your mechanical systems we expect. Not surprising, mechanical systems last around 10 years, so if they're not deficient now, we would anticipate a lot of them going out in the next 10 years, so that's pretty expected. I mentioned a facility condition index. So we use this as a general indicator of health of your facility, and it's a way to normalize your data. So your high school is bigger than your elementary school. It will probably always have more need forever because it's just bigger than that elementary school. It doesn't mean that it's in worse condition though. So we take the first 5 years of need and your current deficiencies, and we divide that by your replacement value to come up with a ratio so that we get everybody on an even playing field. A lot of districts or clients use this as one indicator of replacement, renovation, or whatnot. It's only one indicator. You guys don't have any in that bucket. Usually anything over 65% is considered a replacement candidate, but oftentimes community sentiment, historical value, all sorts of things can come into play when you decide to replace a facility. But again, none of your facilities fall into that category. Most of your facilities are very good. Like Jane mentioned, we've done a lot of work across the state of Florida, and your facilities are very good in relationship to everybody else that we've seen lately. There are 9 facilities. These are kind of your 9 worst facilities that are considered poor. Gene Witt there is actually in a renovation process. So since Jane's team has the database, they'll be able to update the database, and next time they talk to you, they'll have done a bunch of work, and it'll get up into the good category because it won't have as many deficiencies. And there's a full list in the back of that, the report. So just a quick summary of findings. We found $96 million worth of current deficiencies, most of those being priority 2s, and a lot of them associated with your interior finishes, with another $560 million over the next 10 years, and a significant portion of those associated with your mechanical systems, for a total of $656 million of budgetary costs over the next 10 years. And as I mentioned, our assessors found that your schools were very well constructed, very well maintained, and a fellow that worked with our district, have worked with him in Duval County all last year. He said they were far better than the schools he walked in Duval County, and we've worked in Miami County. So you guys have done a really great job with your schools. So what's next? We did an assessment. We put a lot of guys on the ground. Jane's team will get our MAP software. This is proprietary software of Jacobs that we use across the country. Miami-Dade County has actually used it for 15 years. Rolando Nacuse is in that database every single day, updating his data so that he has a current idea of what's actually happening in his facility. So we'll deploy that to Jane's team. We have the training scheduled for the middle of for the middle of June, so that we can get her team trained up on how to use that. And we'll support Jane over the next few months to make sure that they understand how the software works and if they have any questions as that goes. Also, the next step in using this data is to prioritize and make those decisions that are best for the district. And there is a piece of the software where you can create projects, so you can take deficiencies and life cycle items and bundle them up into little projects and have a little budgetary project for that. And that's a really great way to utilize the data. And finally, once you start getting all this data along with your educational goals, your enrollment projections, you can start to make decisions around what it is you want to do with your facilities moving forward into a capital plan. Am I done? Let Heather finish up.
Good afternoon. So we wanted to tell you what we're going to do with all this lovely data that we've received. As already stated, over the next month, our key staff will be training on the utilization of data for reports and how to update and maintain the data. Then once that training is completed, we'll be able to generate reports by schools, topic, level, and item. Sandy Ford, Todd Henson, Jane Dreger, and myself met last month to develop a plan for the next steps that we're going to take. The data will be analyzed by the key staff for each area. Then we're going to identify key components of the budget that we need for our 5-year capital plan. The process has already begun, and this will take effect for our fiscal year 2021 capital plan. Cost estimates will be more accurate and inclusive. We'll have the ability to adjust costs for current market trends, which is something that we've struggled with in the past. Using this data, project recommendations will be developed for future cost-saving initiatives. For instance, we can look at the facility condition index and combine those projects into a comprehensive project. All of this will take us about 6 to 9 months, with the goal of January 20th being when we're able and ready to discuss board priorities for the future. This timeline will allow us to analyze, prepare, and organize the data, present it to the board for your input, and then finalize our 5-year capital plan. Well, we are also able to utilize this data right now for any instances that may come up to evaluate repairs. And in closing, we'd like to thank all of those who participated. There are a lot of hours spent getting over 25,000 pieces of data into the database. So building staff, operations staff, construction services all work together to make this happen.
Any questions, fellow board members? I think we've had a very, okay, I'm sorry, is that Mr. Hopes? Okay, Board Member Hopes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to commend the superintendent, Saunders, and Jane and Mike and Heather. This was a major task. They selected an outstanding firm that has substantial experience, and the ability to operate the data system and the analytics will allow the district and the board to make decisions based on real quantifiable data. It was long overdue. I think it will serve us well. As they mentioned, districts like Miami-Dade that have far more facilities have deployed this approach, and it has resulted in a very effective use of at times scarce capital dollars. So thank you all. I know it was a lot of work, and I really appreciate all those efforts. Thank you.
Thank you, Board Member Hopes. Vice Chair Messenger.
I kind of just wanted to echo what Dr. Hope said and say that when I spoke to principals, they talked about how thorough your team was. And that was really great to hear from them. They basically said they didn't miss a thing. And I think there's a lot of value. I'm very data-driven. I think probably we all are if we're sitting up here. And so to have something that is from an outside source that we know was extremely thorough, I think is very valuable. I do have one question about, I guess, the software that you're talking about. When the staff learn how to use that software, which, I mean, I don't know, it could be very complicated. I'm not a software person. Will that be able to give us a breakdown of like per school, what this FCI and what was really accounted for? Because I'm looking at like the numbers for the high schools, and there's different numbers for each high school, what they say in this draft that we got. And I guess now it's not a draft, because now we've got it's official now. But well, you know, when you get used to this draft, you're like, I don't know what's going to be changed, but now it can't be changed because it's been printed. But codified. Look at you with your vocabulary.
SAT word of the day.
Your SAT word. Will there be a breakdown per school that the staff will be able to access and be able to share with us so that we know which things are being said, hey, there should be this much money, or, you know what I mean, this is how much it'll cost. I mean, not necessarily this much money, but that's how much it'll cost.
Yes,
So-
so we asked for the deliverables specifically to be the whole entire set of data and them to train us on that data. So right now, the IT folks from Jacobs and our IT folks are working together for it to be on our server, the data to reside on our server. Our staff is going to be trained June 17th and 18th. And then after that initial training, they're going to come back and show us how to do those projects. I think that, like, if at a certain school we need to do these 10 things, then what does that look like? And what leaves that to be done? And what would that do to that facility condition index? So after we learn how to use it, then they're going to show us how to manipulate it, probably about 3 or 4 weeks after that initial training, so that we'll be able to not try to absorb all that in
Sure.
2 days of training.
So if we're hoping to gain more information about these different specific schools, that will be the time that we might be able to get some of that.
Yes.
Once they have the, right, so as you mentioned, they were very thorough. So everything is a unique deficiency. So you would be able to call Jane up and say, hey, what's in this $1 million? And she's like,
Right.
well, there's 37 doors and 500 square feet of roof needs repaired, and
2 air handlers,
yeah.
1 chiller, 2 compressors, and it's by building system, by
By building.
building.
so she could even tell you at building 4, you need, these 7 things that'll cost $1 million.
Okay.
So it's very detailed. Sometimes
If
maybe
we'd
too
had
detailed.
this information, and I use Johnson as a great example, if we had had this information when we were converting Johnson and Wakeland, and we said, oh, we just need to put an addition there, because that school looks like it's in pretty good shape, we would have been able to say, the controls don't meet the district standards, the air handlers are done, the chillers are done, the carpet is bad, the surfaces are slippery, there's ADA compliant issues, they can't secure the front office. All of those deficiencies would have been part of a database, and we wouldn't have been heading down the street of just doing an addition there and then going, whoa, wait a minute, we need to do this other work at the campus. We want to try to avoid that. Makes us all look bad. So to group those projects together that really need to be done.
With your experience, do districts typically use this FCI number, or do they start with the priorities when they're creating that capital plan? Which thing do they start with? I mean, I guess the priorities probably are also part of this FCI number, but,
They're all in there. A lot of times you do start with your worst condition facilities, but you really have to take a holistic look at it. And none of your facilities are bad by any means. So when we sit down with districts, a lot of times we'll go school by school and say, okay, that's this school, you have this much need. What are you really going to do there? Okay, well, we want to do everything. So I'll have clients go through line by line, and then they figure out, well, we're not going to be able to do everything. We better start looking at priority 1s and 2s. Or we really have a lot of problems with this isn't a good district for, but Federal Pacific panels are a huge problem. They're out of date, they catch on fire, all these, we want to go get all those first. I don't think you guys have any of those. So it's a really holistic view, but generally they'll kind of start at the top and work their way down.
Okay. And it would also be part of a long-range plan committee where we say, we might not want to put a bunch of money in this school because it's got declining enrollment and there are other problems with filling up that school. Or instead of just renovating that school, we want to change the program at that school where that's where others besides just facility folks would get involved and say, yeah, that's a viable solution. So that project would look different than just a regular remodel.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for everything you did.
Okay. Okay, Superintendent.
There were security items listed on here, but that will, when we come back to discuss what our priorities are, we do know that there will be some state dollars for some safety and security measures, but if that does not cover it, we will need to look at those probably in terms of rank order priority and then go from there, because we do know, and we've done a lot of things, but we do know that we've not covered as much as we would like to do. So I think, you know, as Reverend Golden said, I think we need to look at the age of the building. We need to look at capacity of the building, what programs needs, and safety and security, as well as these measures to look at a comprehensive priority ranking, because there's never going to be enough money. So how do we make the best decisions with the monies that we do have? We're just very fortunate in this district to have had 15-year sales tax and then had it renewed. Without the community support of that, our facilities would not be in the shape that they are in.
Thank you, Madam Superintendent. Board Member Golden.
Yeah. Along those lines, how do we keep track of the availability of funds in conjunction with the prioritizing of needs to the extent that we then have to think about additional funding sources? Because that always seems to be where the rubber really meets the road. We can do this, but we can't do this or do that unless we raise taxes, issue bonds, whatever. So as we go along, are we going to be able to not make this seem like a last-minute discussion? Because I just heard we're not even going to get where we need to be in terms of this FCI for another 6 to 9 months. So that puts us all the way to the next school year, and then the capital plan for the year after that. So are we going to regularly receive updates as to the monies that have been spent to change the FCI indexes at which schools and why? And the last part of that question is, and are we building into our capital planning the growth that is coming and still coming, particularly in the east side of in the east part of our county?
The condition assessment doesn't take that into account, but certainly the long-range plan committee would. Because those growth projects wouldn't exist in a current inventory. So this is what we have. What we need would be addressed by that long-range plan committee. And then recommendations would be brought to the board.
So these ought to come hand in glove.
Yes.
One is not separate.
And once they, like with the new schools we're doing now, even though they're not opening for 88 days, we put them in the inventory because we wanted them to be part of our data set.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Board Member Kennedy.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I want to say, Cindy beat me to the punch, but I want to say the same thing, that when you talk to other people from other districts, they comment on how, generally speaking, good our facilities are, and that is to the credit of the voters of Manatee County who've supported us twice now for capital. I really want to address, well, first I have a question. For the page 21 and 22, which is the appendix which lists each school, is there and I was looking for the draft report, but I couldn't pull it up immediately. Is there another appendix which shows exactly where that total came from for each school, the list of projects that amount is based on?
But Jane will get a report for each school.
Okay, so it will be available.
We don't have that detailed data yet.
Okay, but it's on the way. Okay. And then I'm asking this question specifically to one of our high schools, which a few representatives are here tonight. today. But one of the issues that the group from Palmetto High School has brought forward is a drainage issue. And would your report have caught something like that, or you're just basically looking within the square walls or just topography issues like that?
That's kind of a tough one. If they were there and they saw a drainage problem, depending on, it may be a problem today, it might not, depending on rain.
Sure.
Also, if somebody on site, maybe the principal or the maintenance guy said, hey, we always have this problem, that would have been captured if we were aware of it. We
Okay,
would have
gotcha.
tried to estimate that.
It wasn't there, okay.
Okay.
Okay, well, I didn't realize that staff could have, or, a principal, for example, could
Oh, yeah, our
include that
team
in the
talked to the
report.
principal or representative when they got there. First of all, just to let them know they were there, but also to ask about issues that we might not be able to see if, it was February, so the air conditioners aren't going full blast maybe, so
Yeah.
things like that.
Okay,
We got as much input as we could from the staff on site as well as Jane's team that, for things we may have missed just because we can't see them that day.
okay, great, that helps a lot, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Meyer.
Okay, thank you very much. Great presentation. Okay, the next thing on the agenda was discussion about Barbara A. Harvey Elementary. I'm wondering, since Jane Dragers is here, if it'd be okay with fellow board members to ask construction, update. Are you prepared to do that right now?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
I forget this isn't a touch screen. All right. So, what you won't be able to see is I got some drone footage of the new schools yesterday, and so I'm really excited to share them. But in your books, they just show up as a picture. So, we'll just walk through. So I was asked to give a construction update, which I'm really happy to do. Right now, we have 5 large projects totaling $195 million. That's Barbara Harvey Elementary, Mona Jane Middle, Parish Community High School, the Professional Support Center renovation, and the Witt Elementary renovation that we just talked about. We also have a lot of small projects totaling $13 million, and I won't go into all of those. Many of them are summer projects for this year. The Witt Elementary, I'll just give you some high-level data for 5 projects, and then I'll walk you through the 3 new schools. So Witt Elementary addition and renovation is a $23 million project. The design is 95% complete. We have our final design meeting with the superintendent and the executive directors of education on May 23rd. The site work has started. The CM guaranteed maximum price is in process. And the concerns for that project are the budget and the compliance with the new floodplain requirements because of where that school is located. The Professional Support Center is $7.4 million. It's ongoing renovations. We are done with 3 of the 10 phases and really are no concerns except for we're in everybody's way there. Parish Community High School is $90 million, 2,100 student stations opening in August. The concerns that we have are really just the Fort Hamer Road extension. Mona Jane Middle, $45 million school for 1,164 student stations, no concerns. Barbara Harvey Elementary, $28 million, 838 student stations opening in August. This school is a shelter. EHPA stands for Enhanced Hurricane Protection Area Shelter. The law requires that we provide shelter space within our schools in 50% of the applicable spaces. In this particular school, because of the need for shelter spaces, we agreed to make 100% of the relative spaces shelter. Our concerns here are traffic improvements and the alternate drive that you guys were discussing earlier today. So the first slide you see here is an overview of Parish High School. I was asked to do kind of where we were in budget and time. What I put on here for you is, we call these the board work summary sheets. This particular sheet on the left goes with each board item that we submit to you and is kept ongoing throughout the whole project. So it's really a snapshot of everything that's been done. On this project, the architect and contractor contracts were approved by the board in February 2017. Site work started in September of 2017. The final design was approved in November of 2017, and the full construction started in December 2015. The original budget was $80 million, and that was based on a budget from Braden River High School square foot cost from 2005, plus the consumer index inflation, which we have seen did not rise proportionately with the cost of construction increases. We also enlarged the core facilities for a future classroom wing building there. We also located it where it would go on the site. We added automotive program, an agriculture program, and health programs at the school. We added athletic amenities for hosting regional events, including our new district standard rubberized tracks, practice field for soccer, lacrosse, visitors concession, as well as the typical field house football, baseball, softball that we usually do. We also included new district technology standards. We now use VoIP phones, enhanced instructional technology, and lab technology. So the financial health of this job, as of May 1st, the total project budget is $90 million. The FF&E and technology budget is taken out of that to get $86.1 million for the total construction budget. And I did two comparisons to see how they relate. I did a total spent to date and balance. The total spent to date puts us at 72% complete. The CM contract spend to date is 76.53%, so we're right in line. This is the before picture. This is what the project looked like before we started. It was an empty 50-acre field and 48 acres of greenhouses, and that's what it looks like now. And this I included is a shot of Fort Hamer. This was one of our concerns. A lot of progress has been made on this road. I'm slightly less worried that it'll be done in time for the students to arrive. So that was exciting. And this was the project photo of yesterday. Here's some internal, wait a second, let me go back. Courtyard shots. Then we have the auditorium. I showed this first in the interior photos because the auditorium is the furthest behind. Our backup plan was if we weren't going to have anything ready, it would be the auditorium because you can have school with the media center, the admin, the classrooms, the gym, and the cafeteria. But the auditorium is going to be ready. As you can see here from the cafeteria, everything is essentially done with the exception of trimming out some electrical and finishing the columns. The paper you see on the floor is protecting the VCT that has already been installed and stripped and waxed. The gym floor is in. Kitchen serving lines in. The health lab, everything's been installed. That paper you see on the floor is protecting the flooring materials. The agricultural barn, the automotive building. Confirmed the milestone schedule. FF&E is confirmed for delivery June 17th for the first building. The high school, they're going to do one building at a time. As we finish, they're going to do, because it was so big for the furniture vendor to do. And this is the drone video.
Oh, we do have drone footage.
That was pretty cool. So what you see there in the foreground is the one-story building with the glasses, the media center on the left, admin in the middle, and the auditorium on the right. And then behind that are the two-story classroom wing additions. What is coming into view right now on the right is the cafeteria with the framing in for the covered eating area outside, the automotive building, and then all of the athletic fields. Next up, Mona Jane Middle School. Same thing, the board work summary sheet that we submit with each piece of board work. The AE contracts were approved by the board in June of 2017. Site work started in December. The final design was approved in March of 18, and the full construction started in March of 18. We did this on both of these schools to get the site work started and get a head start as the design was progressing. The original budget was $45 million. That budget didn't change because that budget was actually based on a recent budget for a prototype in Pinellas County. So we had current localized data for that. Same breakdown here on the financial health. The overall project spent to date shows us at 73% complete. The CM contract spent to date is 74.75%. Here's the original site, and there it is now. There's the front entrance. On the left, you see the media center. Everything is done in the media center except for the furniture. And in the main corridor, that's the least furthest progressed. That's the last thing we did. We poured that slab last, and then it's all enclosed. That's basically a 2-story mall type feeling so that all the circulation is inside the school. You see the cafeteria serving lines and floor and walls and ceiling are done. The kitchen equipment is done and protected. You see the music classroom and the music storage is done. Science labs, really all we need is trim out and technology. The video editing room, typical classroom, and then the locker room shows everything in the locker room is done, including the flooring and the benches, which are protected. On the left, you see the gymnasium bleachers and the gym floor before we installed the the urethane on top, and the right is, they just did that last night. Check the milestone schedule with this again. FF&E is confirmed for delivery on July 1st, and that's on schedule with everything. And here's the drone video for this. Hold, please. Sorry, there's the drone video for the middle school. These are the 2-story classroom wings you see here in the foreground with that mall in the back where the little clear story windows are. The left is coming into view as the front entrance to the school with admin in that little curved shape in the front. There's gullet in the back to show the kind of similar but not construction. The campus is tied together. There's the front entrance of the school. And next up is Barbara Harvey. We shot this just yesterday after all the rain, so you see that some of it is a little underground. Same project summary sheet. AE and CM contracts were approved in June of 17. The final design was approved in March of 18. Its full construction started in March of 18. The original budget was $20 million. The revised budget was $28 million. The reason for that was the 100% shelter space that I talked about, relocating the covered play area, adding a berm along Moccasin Wallow Road, which I think Dr. Hopes spoke of when we were talking about the driveway, and added roadway improvements at Moccasin Wallow. All of those were part of our permitting process with Manatee County. The financial health of the project, the total overall spent shows that we're at 72% complete, and the CM contract spent to date is 81% complete. The reason for this difference is because we just have the direct material purchases being subtracted out of their contract at tonight's board meeting. So here's the empty field, and there's the school. And there it is yesterday. This is the south elevation of the school. This is where you can kind of tell it's the same prototype as Miller Elementary, but this is where you can kind of see how it's different and reflects the community of Parrish a little better. We've got floors, the second floor corridor, everything is done except for the ceilings and the electrical trim. On the right, you see the work being done in the media center. These pictures are from May 1st and April 29th. So they're a couple weeks old. Typical classroom here on both of these. First floor corridor, front office casework. And milestone schedule, everything's on track except for the drive and the roadwork improvements, which is, I guess, gonna be talked about more today. FF&E is confirmed for June 11th, and that's on schedule. And here's our drone video footage from yesterday. Well, maybe not. There we go.
This was like literally right after the downpour?
Yes, literally 3:30 yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna do this at the last board workshop and it got moved, so I really wanted to have current stuff.
No, that was quite a rainstorm right at the dismissal yesterday.
Yeah. So really all I have to say is students are coming August 12th and we will be ready. We have 89 days and we got a lot of work to do, but any questions?
Board members, any questions? Great presentation. Thank you, very much.
That is my pleasure.
Okay, all right. Hope you didn't mind we're taking you out of order. Let me go back a minute to, with respect to King Middle School. I know we talked about it, and Mr. Gauss made an excellent presentation. I don't remember, Mr. Pindley, did you have some comments you wanted to make in addition to that? Yes, sir. Okay. And I think, Mr. Gauss, you informed us very well, and we certainly went over, 3 minutes. I think we had about 10 minutes of discussion or so. Was there something additional that you wanted to make in your presentation? Okay, thank you. Mr. Pindley, thank you very much, sir.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, board members, superintendent. We received a request from the West Manatee Fire Rescue District for the board to consider selling a portion of the King Annex property at 75th Street Northwest and 9th Avenue Northwest. The superintendent's asked that I share that request with you, as well as information about the property. So the fire chief is Tom Sosa. I believe he's here today. And he requested that we sell a portion of the property so that they can put an office building on site. There were two different requests. The first is to consider selling the northwest corner, which currently has several tennis courts, or the northeast corner of the site. Now, the northwest parcel, in his original description, it was described as a 135 by 250-foot parcel, 34,000 square feet, with a building footprint of about 5,200 square feet. In talking with Mr. Galls earlier today, they have decided to withdraw that request because it is in the flood zone, and you will see that momentarily. So that one's no longer being considered. The one that is being considered is on the northeast corner of this parcel. So let's look at the property quickly, and then I'll give you an overview of some pertinent data. The main campus here, which is on the south half of this picture, is approximately 19 acres. It includes several linear parcels that run all the way from 75th Street over to the western boundary. The annex, which is everything from the tennis courts up, is approximately 8 acres. So we have a total land area of about 27 acres. That's slightly smaller, about 10% smaller than our typical middle school site today, which is 30 acres. So on this slide, you can see in lavender color a flood zone. You'll notice that a significant part of the property, both the annex and the original parcel, are within the flood zone. On the main campus, which I just told you was 19.9 acres, I believe, 9.9 of that is within the flood zone. And of the annex, about 4.5 acres of it is in the flood zone. On the annex property, what's shaded in dark gray, that's the area that is outside of the flood zone, and that's about 4.5 acres. So now we have about almost 14 and a half acres of property. And again, our typical school site for middle school would be about 30 acres, I'm sorry. So here's some information that I would provide you for your consideration. The current use of you know what, let me go back just a second. I would like to go back and point something out. On the south half of this picture in the flood zone, you see that you see the primary part of the campus with all the buildings. If you look to the west or to the left of that, those are playfields and retention. You'll notice that's in the flood zone. And if you talk with the principal or the students out there or the PE coaches, they'll tell you that that field is often wet over there, so they can't play in that. Okay, now the current use of the annex property, King Middle School uses it for physical education. They use both the grassed area and the tennis courts. They, as best I can tell, do not use the courts that are under the X, which is that Xed area was one of the 2 original requests that they have withdrawn. And again, it's been withdrawn because it's in the flood zone entirely. And I think it would create some issues if they were to build their issues for us. The other users are Manatee High School. Their tennis teams play and practice over there. Again, the northwest corner is no longer under consideration, but the northeast corner is. Mr. Gauls, I think he provided you with a drawing earlier. I've taken that drawing and just overlaid it here. He told you then, it's a concept plan. It's going to change. I think he said he spent an hour doing this. But it's just to give the board a concept of what this would look like. So one thing that I think will be required, if the parcel looks something like I've outlined in yellow there would need to be access easements, because it's doubtful that they would be able to get direct access from either 9th or 75th Street. But I have not checked that with the county. It is close though, so they may need access easements. And I provided that in green, a green outline basically showing our drive. It could go a different direction. I don't know. Again, this is a concept, and I think what Mr. Gauls told you earlier is they don't want to spend time and effort and money pursuing this if the board doesn't have an interest. Some additional information. The retention pond that's directly in the center of the annex property, that overflows. If we have several days of rain, it overflows, and it appears to be an issue of the sizing of the utilities offsite, the stormwater utilities. Our pond holds it until it can release it, but it overflows, and right now it's a lot of that goes into those tennis courts that are under the X. Those are actually pickleball courts right now, so some of those courts are underwater. So any additional development out here, we would definitely need to make sure that it didn't exasperate the flooding issue. To me, the biggest issue with this is King's a nice school. We built it, I don't know, 2005, I think, 6, somewhere right around there. It'll probably be after my lifetime, but one day it may need to be replaced. And when we replaced it last time, because of the flood zones and everything, we had to do it in the existing footprint. So those of you that weren't on the board at the time, you may not know this, but for 1 year, we bused all the students to Braden River High School. And that's where they went to school, before Braden River High School was Braden River High School. So my caution to the board would be, if you sell this property, including any easements, you could tie it up and prevent us from being able to rebuild King in an economic way in the future. Now, will the school go here? Probably not, but what could go there are portable classrooms while we're staging the construction of King. Again, that's hopefully 40, 50 years down the road, but when we look at these things, those are the type of issues we look at, because there is no additional property adjacent to us. So if you give this up, in the future, some board's going to have an issue. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions or take direction from you.
Board members, board, vice chair, messenger.
I went to King, but, you know, before it was all, you know, fancy and stuff now.
The old King.
The old King, it was still fancy, I'm just, So, just so that I completely understand what you're saying, your concern would be that if it were to be sold, that it could not be used for portables or for future building?
There's actually several concerns. Number one, any additional flooding would be detrimental to us. Now, the way that things are supposed to work, they can't release any additional water onto our site, but I hear that argument a lot. So that's one concern. Another concern is, right now, it's used for physical education. It is actually in use by our students. So if you take part of that field and sell it, you know, like I mentioned, they can't use the existing fields sometime because they're wet. I mean, they sink up in those.
Right.
So it cuts down on that. I think that there will be access easements needed that will, even if they didn't buy the property, it restricts the property. And you wouldn't be able to put portables on there in the future. If you wanted to build a portable, I'm going to call it a portable city, to replace the entire school, or you wanted to build the school itself. So it's all those concerns. I mean, the school itself could go on that site. You know, it depends on the design. And you can build in a flood zone. It's just, it creates other issues, and we have to compensate for that.
So you're saying that students, as of right now, play in this site? They play over here in this field?
In that corner, I can't tell you that. In the grassed area in general, I can tell you that they do.
Okay. Well, the grass area behind the school or the grass area here?
I can't see what you're,
This is the picture that we
okay.
were given earlier.
In the grass out there.
Grass area here.
Yes, they do use that.
They will play in this grass area?
Yes.
Right now, they have like soccer goals set up about here, and this is what they're using for play field.
Oh, they just don't use, they don't use that big piece of land behind them because it's just too mucky?
I mean, sometimes they do, but it's,
It just
you know,
gets
if you get
mucky.
a couple days of rain,
Sure.
the tide's in, I mean, we're right there on the
Right.
bay. It creates a problem.
Okay. I guess my other question is, you talked about when the school was rebuilt and the students were bused to a whole nother school while the school was being rebuilt, it sounded like. If this land existed then, why didn't we do what you're proposing that we should possibly do in the future? Why didn't we do that then?
I'm trying to recall exactly the sequence of events here. Dr. Deering was the superintendent. He determined that we should buy that property. The board had a meeting on Monday night. We closed on the property by Friday.
We're purchasing that property by
We-
that giggle of.
Well,
We closed on it by Friday, did all the due diligence, we did appraisals, we did environmental studies and all that. But the timing was such that there were, well, let me back up. There was a road separating that annex property from the school. It's a shell drive, okay? We did not own it at that time. So even though we purchased the property, the decision was made to build it on the existing property. King Middle at the time was in serious need of being replaced and didn't feel like we could wait. Since then, we've gone in and acquired that drive to, I think there's 2 houses, maybe 3 down that road, and we provided an access easement back to them. And we also acquired 2 other small pieces of property. So it was a combination of things. Mainly, we couldn't utilize the whole property at the time because of the drive,
Okay. All right, thank you, that's all I have.
which no longer exists. I mean, it exists, but it's not illegal.
Thank you, Vice Chair Messenger. Board Member Hopes, I think, is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I mean, I have a number of concerns, probably more than when this issue originally came up because of the current, I guess, the proposed changes in the flood zones in the county. And I do recall discussions with staff that the current athletic area that they use is not really usable on a number of occasions. And I think that's why they've been migrating over to the dry land, which is this partial. But with regards to the superintendent, I have a number of issues. One is we're just embarking on a process of a strategic plan for the district and how we're going to plan for the future. We are going to be embarking, based on this data, on a new long-range capital plan. And really, given all those factors and the probable need sometime in the future of needing to probably revise that campus, maybe add to it, maybe permanently move the athletic area over to the sort of dry island. We may need to use some of that other land in the flood zone to create better drainage. And I just don't believe that we should even be entertaining divestiture of any real estate until we have our strategic plan, until we have our long-range capital plan, so that we really know what our future needs are. And as you said, there's really no other place in that part of the county that we can build a middle school or expand a middle school. And we know the problems that we have in our middle school capacity right now. And so I really, as much as I'd like to help, I just don't see being able to support divestiture of this property at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Board Member Hopes. Board Member Kennedy, and then Board Member Golden. Okay.
I have two quick ones, 2 quick questions. And Mr. Gauss, maybe you could address this too. But if memory serves, this was originally, the original conversation, I think that I had with Randy first, Mr. Cooper first, was we were talking about possibly a property swap? Or am I mixing up projects? Okay, my bad. Strike that. Mike, the other question I have for you too is the area that is kind of flood prone, swampy, if we've had a couple days of rain, and I'm just asking for a ballpark figure. What would it cost the district if we were to kind of build a retention pond back there and then use that earth that we move to raise the elevation level to alleviate that problem?
Well, we have a retention pond back there already. It's dry retention. It is on this picture, it's as far left in the bottom half of the screen. You see a big field down there, about half of that is retention. To build the rest up, I can't tell you, but we're going to have to compensate for the floodplain. So I'm thinking that it would eat up some of this good property on the annex. You can't start filling a floodplain without the compensation.
Right.
I think what you've got there is, I looked at it years ago, and it's acting a little bit like a seepage slope. In other words, the groundwater is starting to come out at the surface when you have high water table. So rather than raising it, you'd almost need to intercept it to redirect it around.
much different, okay, gotcha.
Out to the pond.
So
I don't
it-
know
yeah.
what permitting issues you might run into, but you wouldn't raise it. You'd probably just have to intercept the water and get it away from the field.
Okay, because it's water coming up.
Yeah,
It's just seeping out, as coming out
tidal.
of the surface.
Yeah, it's tidal, a combination of tidal and rain. You get that
Okay.
high tide and rain, and it's a problem.
Okay, so strike that too. Okay, I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Kennedy. Board Member Golden, you had a question?
Yes, Mr. Gauss, you might want to stay,
Yes, sir.
because the question that I have is with respect to this easement that you said legally makes it different for us. And I guess the question that I would want to ask is that the easement that was given is an irreversible, irrevocable easement that separates the annexed, it
Yes, sir.
separates.
Let me clarify that. It is a non-exclusive easement for access to those 2 or 3 houses. It is not revocable. However, we would have the ability to go back in and negotiate with those owners and provide them an alternative access, possibly up to 9th Avenue Northwest. There are things you could do. You could offer to pave a drive up there. Right now, they've got a shell drive that cuts through playgrounds.
Okay.
So there are possibilities.
Okay, then let's talk about the possibilities. Which is a better possibility for us? To undergo the expenses of whatever it takes to be able to give them the X'd out property, which we say is no longer under consideration because it's in a flood zone, and to get an easement going in that direction, so that we then have all of the property along 75th and along 9th, all the way back over to the existing school, to consider a new facility or replacement facility. Is that a better alternative than doing nothing and leaving this easement in place now, which then prevents the use of the total piece of property in any circumstance? Because if that easement is there, as long as those homes are back there and they have no other way to get out, then we could never have a unitary, unified piece of property. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that's, and one other thing, there's not gonna be any more property out there. So if there's gonna be a new school, I think that it ought to involve some discussion of whether or not we can create a piece of property for us that meets our needs and at the same time solves a problem for another governmental entity that meets their needs. And so what I'm really asking is, how irrevocable and how irreversible is this that's in red here 2 or 3 times no longer being considered? Because if it's no longer being considered, then that's a problem for us, because it then leaves the status quo with King being occupying 2 pieces of property that's split up the middle by easement that doesn't benefit us at all, and that probably wasn't able to be negotiated years ago when we made this decision that nobody can undo. So now that we got these lemons, is there a better way to make lemonade?
Okay, thank you, Board Member Golden. We're running about 11 minutes over, kind of a lot of time.
That's fine.
I think we've had good discussion. Appreciate very much Mr. Goss, coming in, Mr. Pendley. I think that we're not going to make any official decision today, but thank you very much for this information. And thank you, representatives from the fire district. You're important to us, too. You've got a little more acquainted with considerations we have to take into account. And stay tuned, okay? Thank you very much. We have update on Sun Coast campaign for grade level reading for 10 minutes. Are you all here? And we appreciate all the great stuff you do. Thank you.
Yes. I'm gonna just come sit down, please. You're starting.
I'm starting, but thank you very much for this opportunity. We always love talking about our kids, about our campaign, and about our partnership with the school district. So although I am here while you're working, oh, thank you, that was really quick. I want to acknowledge our partners that are in the room, but also some of our partners who were in the room but had to leave. So I'm Bronwyn Baytall. I'm the area president for United Way Suncoast, and I have with us today our acting county administrator, Sherry Corrier, of course, Superintendent Saunders, who was already here. Paul Scharf from the Early Learning Coalition was here, but he had to leave. And Susie Bowie from Manatee Community Foundation. So when we talk about the campaign for grade level reading in Manatee County, that's our partnership that we put together as the advisory council for that work. I have no idea how to operate this, so we're gonna just make some guesses.
You did it.
Can we get technical
Arrow?
assistance for?
Whoops, I messed up. I'm sorry,
Just
maybe escape. Okay.
No, arrow keys.
And then arrow keys. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you.
So you all may be aware, but I'm just going to reiterate, because every time we have the chance, it's a good idea to do that. The Suncoast Campaign for Grade Level Reading is part of a national movement working to ensure that our children are reading on grade level by the time they leave third grade. Children who are reading on grade level by the time they leave third grade are 4 times more likely to graduate from high school and are also ready for fourth grade, where they're reading to learn. The focus areas for the campaign for grade level reading are school readiness, attendance, summer learning, family engagement, and health determinants. And our lead partner for the Suncoast campaign for grade level reading is the Patterson Foundation. In Manatee County, it's United Way Suncoast, and in Sarasota County, it's the Community Foundation of Sarasota. So where do we go from here? We've been working on the campaign for grade level reading for about 4 years now. We're in year 5, and it's time to dig deep. The challenge is that in the 2017 and 18 school year in Manatee County, 989 third graders in 10 Manatee County Title I schools, and 742 of them tested as not reading on grade level by the time they left third grade. That's 75%. So when we look across our community and we learn that 49% of our children overall are not reading on grade level, when we focus on these particular 10 Title I schools, it's 75%. So using 2 prototype schools, we're going to cut that number in half by next year to get our kids reading on grade level in these 2 prototype schools. And let's talk, that is the big plan, or the beginnings of the big plan.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Bronwyn, if you could go back to your previous slide. I just have a data reporting question. 75% of third graders are not on grade level. Are you saying that levels 1, 2, and 3 are not on grade level?
In third grade.
In third grade, yeah, that's what I mean. Okay. Yeah, because if I remember the numbers from last year, we were around 50 that were not, according to DOE.
This is a subset, so you have 49%
Oh,
of our
true.
children.
It's
in
still,
our-
75 just feels a little high, though.
it is high.
Look at these 10 Title I schools, it's at 75%.
Okay, so district-wide, we're 48.
Yes.
49, thank you.
49. Yes.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
thank you.
Sorry to interrupt. Okay.
Yes, no, it's alarming, and it's important. So the big plan is a collaborative effort to ensure that our children are reading on grade level. The big plan includes both intended partnerships in neighborhoods, 3 particular neighborhood areas that we're referring to as the Central Region, the North Region, and the South Region, otherwise known as the Central Corridor in Manatee County, where our 10 schools are existing. So you'll see the list of the 10 schools there. You'll also see that list of our partners. So why are we focusing on these particular 10? So right in front of you, I know this is death by PowerPoint when you have a graphic like this in there. Hopefully you have these materials in front of you as well. And this is reflective of the 2017 and 18 school year. We realize that when we have this many children who are struggling that need us the most, that in order to make an impact on our district as a whole, we need to get really good at addressing the issues facing our children in these particular schools. We also know that some of our children are arriving to school not ready to learn at all. So they haven't had any formalized quality early learning before they've ever come to the school door. And we know that our families who are ALICE, asset limited, income constrained, employed, have fewer access to the kinds of things that many of us may have experienced when we were younger. And our families might need a little bit more education and a little bit more assistance in how to work with their children as their first teacher, as their parent or caregiver. So that's why we're focused in these 3 areas and on these 10 schools, but you see the numbers. So you can get to those reasons on your own as well. So the big plan is focused on results and localities. Yes, Reverend Golden?
Before we go further, is there any statistical data that has been compiled to establish the level of expertise in the schools that you're focusing on with respect to the teachers? Because I know we've had discussions about whether or not some of this might not be skewed because we have teachers who are not quite prepared to meet the challenges of these kinds of schools. And I'm just wondering, I don't want to talk anecdotally, I'm wondering if statistically the hirings and the staffings of these schools is noticeably different from
Turn around, I'm like,
Yeah,
these
from-
are good things for Superintendent Saunders.
I can comment to a little bit of that. A couple of these schools are in state turnaround. You're not able to have teachers that are not effective or highly effective on their evaluation. And if they did have any of those evaluations that did not meet that need, they would be placed in our displacement list and be given an opportunity to work at a different school. And you can only hire teachers that meet those qualifications.
You said that a couple of these schools. That's 10 here. So what I'm.
That's correct.
Okay, so what I'm concerned about are the other 8, because if we do 20%, then of these 900 kids, we still have an exposure here of the 742 kids, we still have an exposure of 742 minus 144. So that's about 500 children that we still have in this community that are being underserved. So I appreciate them being economically disadvantaged, but it's really rough when they're economically disadvantaged and they come into a classroom and now they're educationally disadvantaged because the people that they meet there don't understand just what we're talking about right now. So I know we're not going to solve that here and we're not going to vote. This is a workshop. But I'm concerned when we consistently and continually just dismiss the fact that part of the problem is in the classroom when the children get there.
That's a very good point. And I will tell you, we have emphasized more support in those schools, ensuring that in many of those, they have multiple assistant principals, they have coaches in district office pushing in. And in some cases, if we have not found the proper teacher, then our specialists or other folks are required to go in and help support and teach those classes. But you are right. There's nothing better than a highly qualified teacher in front of the children. We do have to have the most qualified. So we have put some measures in place in the last year, in a couple of years, beyond what the state requires, to ensure that there's not a long-term sub that's not able to go and deliver, that we're pushing in some other people of supports to make sure that they do have quality instruction going on. Even if an assistant principal has to go teach the class, that is what we're doing as well.
And all I'm asking is that we keep
That's a factor.
keep that data also, so that that's a part of the consideration of whether or not the children are being well served.
Sure.
Thank you.
You're absolutely right. That is one of the things that we will continue to look at as we go forward. And let's think about these children who we're working with, our children, as our future teacher force. So if we're raising our future teacher force, I may not be using the right words, right, future workforce of teachers, then this is the time to invest and to invest heavily and to get really good at engaging our families and our community in solutions. And that's where United Way comes in, as well as our partners that are here in the room as well. So how does the big plan work? We focus on results and localities, and we've already talked about the localities. So we have 3 neighborhoods that are we're going to get laser focused on the attendance zones around these 10 schools, and we'll put results first so that we're following our children, individual children, and we'll know whether or not individual children are being successful in their school grades. And we've chosen 2 schools to start with. So to your point, Reverend Golden, we wanted to make sure that we chose schools that had principals, that had the leadership, willingness, readiness, capacity, and culture to work with community, to be engaged both in their schools, to know their numbers, to know their children, to know where they were. They answered all of the questions, and we interviewed 5, and all of them had really great answers and were strong candidates. We chose these 2 for a number of reasons. One of those is because it also aligns with some of the work that our county government is doing. So Acting Administrator Sherry Corrier is here as part of that partnership. So Palmview and Samoset, both principals set the targets themselves. And in that first year, when I said we want to cut in half, we actually want to cut in half the number of children at these 2 schools in that first year who are not reading on grade level, focusing on the 1, 2, and 3 levels, as you said. So that's from, let's see if I'm reading this correctly, going to not on grade level at 165, total that are on grade level at 215, and then 219 and 400. So what that is reflective of is it's easier to talk about Samoset, is 10 students in 4 grades over 3 years. So 10 students from kindergarten, first, second, and third. In that first year, 40 students, cut in half the number that are reading on grade level. So by the time that we're finished in those 2 schools, and we will layer in the other schools as we go along, so that by 3 years, we've got all 10 schools that are being focused on, that it will flip that script from 75% who are not reading to 75% who are reading. But remember, this is not just about our schools. As I mentioned, there are extenuating circumstances outside of school and how our children are arriving on day 1, whether or not they're ready to learn. So for United Way and our partners, we're also focused on that 0 to 3 and 4 to 5. But in these 3 areas, on these 10 schools. So to take that a little further, Superintendent Saunders and her team have put together some things that are going to be going on in the schools themselves, and we could talk about other things at another workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Well, this is definitely a partnership with many community initiatives going on, and we have, Dr. Thompson, come on down here. Robin and Sheila Halpin, really, one of the things I noticed is we were doing a lot of initiatives, but we were a little scattered. So we've kind of aligned all of our forces to where we're all moving in the same direction now. And we do really feel that we're going to be able to move the needle. But by focusing on these 10 schools and the communities that we've identified, we felt that we needed to have a point person really over the volunteers and the community initiatives going on. So underneath Robin Thompson, we have Sheila Halpin, who will be the point person that's really our coordinator for our grade level reading initiative. So we've identified which programs with our volunteer from the communities are going to be in these schools. So in addition to what's going on day in, day out with the teachers, we know these students need beyond that. So we have many supports of volunteers pushing in before school, during school, after school, and in the summer. And I'm going to let Dr. Thompson talk about that, from SOAR and 4 on up to what we're doing with the horns for Dive Into Reading.
Good afternoon. Thank you for letting me speak. Initially, the first go-round of our volunteers, we are going to start with 4 community agencies and volunteer programs. The SOAR and 4 that Ms. Saunders just mentioned, you all are very familiar with SOAR and 4, and that is really birth through 3rd grade. Our focus is pre-K, but we invite the families to each of our SOAR and 4 events. There will be 25 family events next year, and we've partnered with many people in the community for SOAR and 4.
Including?
Yes, including the Manatee Education Foundation, the Manatee Community Foundation. We have the Manatee Central Library we use. Bishop Museum, that it's now called, and the Art Center Manatee. And then within each of those buildings, we have other, like the food bank, we have Partners in Play, 40 Carrots. We have all kinds of community agencies who volunteer to come and facilitate learning engagements for our families. So under that umbrella is the Early Learning Coalition. Paul Scharf was here earlier. As you know, he's the executive director. And all the state funds for VPK come through the Early Learning Coalition. And he is one of the founding members of the Early Learning Community Task Force, which encompasses all of the private providers, our faith-based providers, Head Start, and the school district. So he's an important partner to have, and we appreciate his efforts. He brings the STEAM machine to all the SOAR and 4 events. His employees facilitate learning engagement, so it's a big support for us. And that we move from pre-K and families to Reading Pals and Learning Pals through the United Way, Manatee, or Suncoast United Way. And they provide support for our kindergarten students. And then that moves right into Dive into Reading. You're familiar with John and Amanda Horn from Anna Maria Oyster Bar. They have started a program for which they've received national recognition, Dive into Reading. And we are growing that program, and they're taking it with the rising first, second, and third graders. So we kind of go from SOAR and 4 to Reading Pals to Dive into Reading, and it's a seamless transition all the way from pre-K to third grade. And then finally, Books for Kids. That is the Lakewood Ranch Rotary Club that has lots of books and lots of volunteers. The problem with these organizations is there are lots of well-intended volunteers who are working very hard. There are lots of community agencies donating books, but it's never been connected directly to our curriculum, and we've never been moving forward in the same way. So Ms. Saunders has asked Dr. Halpin to kind of lead the way, and we're starting with these 4 groups so that every book that's ordered for Dive into Reading, Amanda's working with our curriculum department now, which only makes sense. So all of the books that are ordered are going to be leveled, and they're going to be associated with our curriculum. So if you're in this particular level at Dive into Reading, and then you have a volunteer the next year from the Rotary Club, they'll know what level and what books that align with our curriculum. So everything will be moving our children forward along an academic learning continuum.
You said that wonderfully. Very great.
Okay, here are, I think we mentioned I know we mentioned the Early Learning Coalition, Dive into Reading, the Anna Maria Oyster Bar, Books for Kids, SOAR and 4 with Steve and Carolyn Roskamp. I didn't mention their names. United Way, Manatee Education Foundation. Oh, Manatee County Government, a very important partner. Thank goodness, because our association with the library, and the library is willing to also order the books that we are offering in our volunteer programs so that children will have free access to those books. And of course, the Patterson Foundation.
The other wonderful thing that we were able to partner with the county government is we all felt very strongly that in many cases the extended day was a barrier for students not to go to summer school. We know that if you're a retained third grader or you did not pass the FSA, that you can go to summer school and get caught up and do some extra interventions. But if you weren't going 5 days a week, it sometimes put limitations on aftercare. And then if school got out at 2:30, parents really fell short with what you could do by picking their child up if they were at work. So we were able to partner, which is partly how we selected Samoset, with Sherry and the county government, because they do have a federal block grant, and they are providing aftercare free of charge for the parents that go to Samoset Elementary for the summer program. So we know we're going to see amazing results in attendance due to these efforts, and that would not have been made possible without because we do not have funding to pay for aftercare. It's not part of our day, so we can't use district funds for that. So after we see the results, that's something that we're definitely going to have to pursue on what we could do for our other Title I. So I just wanted to show this snapshot. I know some of you have already seen it before, but this one film that we've done with our hashtag We Manatee kind of explains the importance of ensuring that our students are able to read and look at the amazing outcome when we can produce effective, efficient students that are on grade level. So let's see if this one works by our click. And she said it would not. So you're going to come help me. She knows how to fix it better than I do.
My name is Elizabeth Alvarado, and I am currently a loan officer with Capital Good Fund. I graduated from Braden River in 2012.
Elizabeth Garcia.
I grew up in Palmetto, very humble family. I have 3 siblings, an older brother and 2 younger siblings. My parents, they don't have a formal education. My dad only made it to the 2nd grade, and my mom only made it to the 7th grade, and she dropped out to marry my father when she was 15. We had this thought in our minds, ingrained by our parents, that we could make a difference in the world and that we could do absolutely anything we put our minds to. I grew up in this environment, in a place that was a bit, difficult. I guess some people can see it as that, but I was able to make it, and I say that it was with the help of so many people, specifically my parents, but then, teachers. There's one teacher in particular from my time in elementary school that made a really big impact on my life. Miss Dawn Burt is her name. When I met her, I was in the 1st grade, so she was my 1st and 2nd grade teacher. Growing up, I struggled. I couldn't read. I couldn't pick up reading or writing. And my parents, for that year, they hired a tutor. They hired several tutors, actually. They would pay $50 for 30 minutes. And I remember they would do this once a week, and it was so difficult on my family, but my parents refused to give up on me. Miss Burt was always there, and she was always encouraging me. She didn't give up on me. She helped my parents in whatever ways possible. She moved me forward, even though I technically shouldn't have made it to the 2nd grade. By the 6th grade, when I realized I really wanted to go to Harvard, that was my goal. One of the reasons I wanted to go there was just because I wanted to make this teacher proud. I submitted 10 applications in total. By the time Harvard decision came out, though, I had already been accepted to several others with great financial aid, and so I was pretty happy. But then I opened up the decision and I was accepted. And that definitely changed things for my entire family. I mean, the whole room started to cry. I fell to my knees. I wanted to graduate at the top of my class, and I wanted Miss Burt to be there, to be present. And she was able to be present. It's just been beautiful to share that with her, just because she made such an impact in my life and in the lives of my parents. And I strongly believe that teachers like her are the reasons that there are students like me. I went to arguably one of the best institutions in the world, debt-free, graduating, and with so many opportunities ahead of me. Immediately after graduating, I started working up in New York, in Manhattan. I was working for an investment bank. It was great if we look at the money, but the work didn't click. I personally, wanted to do something that benefited people like my parents. To me, this is home, and it's important to be working where home is. It's been an incredible journey, extremely humbling. But at the same time, I feel this sense of responsibility to make sure that I pay it forward. It was in this place, in this county, in Manatee County, that I was able to grow. My name is Elizabeth Alvarado, and I am the School District of Manatee County.
Join us at wemanatee.net.
So thank you very much, Chair Minor. If you have any questions to the team?
Board members? Okay, Board Member Hopes.
I just want to thank everyone, because it's hard to not get emotional, because from the outside looking in before I was on the board, what I saw in the community were so many people that were all working on the same problem. And Superintendent Saunders was the first one to hear my frustration long before she was superintendent, and Dr. Thompson and I spent some time together about getting these kids from these areas in early. And in Tallahassee, Commissioners Bob and Trace and Whitmore came up to me almost a year and a half ago and said, we've got to address this problem. And I'd laid out for them what I saw was we're not collaborating. We're not aligning our services. And the result is what we see here with the Patterson Foundation, the Horns, the Ross camps. Everyone heard the story, and it was like a light bulb went off. And Superintendent Saunders, grabbed the ball, and we found a way to open these two schools, and it's going to do great things. The only thing that I would add is that Manatee L is, I believe, going to be our first community partnership school, and it will take a similar but different approach and include other community engagement, outreach, health assessments, and so I would just ask or suggest that we talk with our academic partners, University of Central Florida and University of South Florida, so as we're collecting the data for these programs, we include some health status, health assessment, so we can look at how the different approaches compare. But I'm so very proud of our district, our community, our partners, because this didn't take long. And everybody really came together, committed. As you know, the county commission and county government stepped up, and it's all come into place. So thank you. Congratulations.
Okay, we're moving on to our, the last item of business on the workshop, and it goes back, and we had some discussion about it concerning a proposed agreement, development agreement concerning Harvey Elementary School. And I think Michelle's going to hand out the proposed, or the district's proposed agreement, and also something which is a modification of it, which I drew up to address some of the concerns that I have concerning this deal. What concerns me is, foremost safety, and also getting our money's worth. Now, I will tell you, one of the things that we heard earlier this afternoon with the Audit Committee, and we've received this information also from the Auditor General, is that there ought to be more involvement of board members in the contracts. And we heard from Susan Agruso, Chair of the Audit Committee, there ought to be public discussion about the contracts. Now, this isn't meant to be disrespectful of the superintendent or any of the staff, but I think basically the thrust of those comments are, we're not doing our job if we say, well, if they're for it, I'm for it. We have to understand it. We have to know that this is the best deal for the safety of our children and for economically. Things that I don't know, that's never been presented to me, is what is the value of this property that is contemplated being deeded to the Neals? Have we done an appraisal of it? I'm not aware of any appraisal. Should we have one? I think so, but it hasn't been provided to board members or the public. I think the public would like to know what it's worth. But it's been suggested that we have a vote at a meeting and put it on the agenda, for tonight's meeting without, the public knowing what the value of this property is. You heard earlier my concerns about what, what safety we have in this roadway. Now, may I suggest, my fellow board members, that if you go to an agreement that's Exhibit C, the one that has the most pages on it, we have, does the media have a copy of this stuff? Do you have a copy?
I don't believe so.
Okay, you want to come up and, do we have extra copies of this stuff?
Mr. Chair, could you describe, we have two documents, but they don't have any labels on them. Could you tell us what we have before us?
Sure. Thank you very much for bringing it. There's one document that has a total of 11 pages, okay? And that's the proposal that is, suggested, I think, by Neil, okay? And I don't mean it disrespectfully by just saying Neil. In the document itself, it refers to Moccasin Wallow Associates LLC as a party to this agreement, hereafter Neil, okay? So in this agreement between Neil and the school, district of Manatee County, the school board of Manatee County, I should say, that has 11 pages.
And who prepared that agreement?
Well, that's a good question, too. And I can tell you, I didn't do it. I think it was Mr. Vogler, who's the attorney for the Neils, prepared it. That's to my,
Did the board's general counsel or our real estate attorney review it?
to my knowledge, I think they did. And when I say they did,
And whose signature? I don't recognize these initials. Who, the initials on page 7, the signature page, and it says counsel to the school board. There are 2 signatures and dates for, like I said, April 26th and April 29th. Who are those individuals?
I don't know those signatures. I know that Mr. Dye signed on here, and I have some real questions about, I went through it, and there's about 10 Scrivener errors in it to begin with.
And then we have another
Okay.
agreement. Who prepared this agreement?
I did.
And was this done in your office?
Yes, it was. And it was,
Has it been reviewed by the board's counsel?
I don't think so, but it's welcome, and I'll go through it, and he has a copy in front of him. The reason, for it is implied by the questions that I had of John Neal, earlier, that there are representations in pictures that are not fulfilled in the wording of the development agreement. And I'm starting with the explanation with suggesting everybody take a look at C, Exhibit C that we're talking about. Now this, we have no, this is what it looks like, and yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, Mr. Chair, but before we get too far removed from accurately identifying the 2 documents, the older document is a 12-page document. There's a...
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, there's...
And that document is the document that contains the initials NP, MP, and some other initial.
Okay, thank you very much.
The other document is a 14-page document that has an additional Exhibit C
Okay.
and an Exhibit D on the back. So that's the difference between the 2 documents.
I thank you very much for that clarification. Yes, sir. But I think Mr. Kennedy?
Thank you. And maybe you're about to do this, but I just had a request for you before you begin presenting. The district's, on page 1, the first difference that caught my eye, the 24-foot wide access roadway is the previous contract, and yours is the 50-foot wide driveway, correct?
I think that can be interpreted as correct, because...
Well, it says 50-foot wide driveway.
Yeah, that's correct. In the, I call it the Neal Agreement, it uses driveway and roadway kind of interchangeably, but the land that we're talking about giving to Neal is 50 feet wide and 370 feet long. It's kind of like a football field plus, the 2 end zones. That's, for kind of reference. And they would like to have this property. And how much is it worth? We haven't been provided by the administration or construction. How much is it worth that we're giving away this public property?
I get that, if I may.
Yeah.
And maybe you're about to do this, but if, for the sake of condensing this, could you just go through your document and point out what is new in your
Sure.
document?
Sure.
Okay, great. Thanks.
What, if you go to, and to understand what we're talking about, that's why I suggest looking at Exhibit C and also Exhibit D to You call it my document, okay, minor document. And if you see Exhibit D, you have this cross road. Now, if you add it up, and let's all do it together, the roadway would have 2 lanes, 12 foot each. That's 24 feet, correct? Okay. It would have to the sides on there would be 13 feet, correct? So that's 26. 26 and 24 is 50. Are we together on the math? Okay. Now, what we have is sodding, and we'd have curbs. Okay, see the 2-foot curbs on each side. Now, curbs are important as to whether or not there's going to be, cuts in the road. There isn't any talk, or there isn't showing in any of these diagrams cuts in the road. And you heard me talk about with Mr. Neal, and I finally elicited from him that there is nothing in the agreement that prevents for Neal, having cuts in this 370-foot driveway. The number or what? And his compadre was saying, well, maybe 2. What is 2? Well, there isn't any limitation whatsoever. And I'm concerned about the cuts. He said, well, we have somebody lined up to have a pre-K school. Maybe there would be another one or another one. Or if they had any cut up there, they may funnel it all in, to conflict with traffic of our children coming to this school. And I consider that a safety threat that hasn't really been discussed, but has to be noted. And yes, Mr. Kennedy.
Thank you. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I just
Okay.
wanted to signal that I had a question when you were done.
Yeah.
But as was stated earlier during public comment, this, I'm on Exhibit D.
Okay.
I'm going south on the proposed roadway.
I think
This
okay.
arm that goes off.
I think that's C.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. It is C. Thank you.
Exhibit C.
This, Mr. Neal said that this road that's on this drawing that goes eastbound and curves around.
Right.
That is eastbound. That road does not exist, nor do they have any plan right now for that road to exist, correct?
I understood him to communicate that. Why they have that there is because I don't think they totally remove it from possibility, and that would connect over to Fort Hamer Road. And but as far as having an access to their kind of old property, I don't have any problem with that. At the bottom, okay. That's away from where our buses are going to go, our kids are going to go. I have included in my proposal that part of the deal is, however, if they do use this property that we own now and becomes really the Neal driveway, a paragraph D on page 2 of my proposal, language, and this language was reviewed by Attorney Dye, Jim Dye. And we say in here, as additional consideration to the development agreement, Neal agrees that should Neal, that doesn't mean they have to or will, should Neal or Neal's successors are assigned, construct or cause to be constructed a public or private roadway between the property described in Exhibit A and Fort Hamer Road, Neal shall grant to school board a non-exclusive pedestrian and vehicle ingress and egress easement over and across such public or private roadway. The parties agree that at the time of the special warranty deed is delivered to Neal, they shall execute such additional and appropriate documents memorializing the school board's interest and stated therein. If Neal gets the Neal deal, they could put in a private roadway from Fort Hamer Road all the way up to where the driveway that's now become Neal driveway has traffic coming in from Fort Hamer Road and wherever else. And I'm concerned about that. And that adds to, that increases the safety because it increases the possible volume. Nothing happens unless they do, put that in. If they don't contemplate it, I don't know why they have this branching out, but at least that, they have that access, for their property according to the minor deal. And that's in paragraph 3D. I don't think there's any reasonable reason for them not to agree to this, but they are not agreeable to it at this time. So, yes, Mr. Kennedy.
So if I'm hearing you right, the only changes between these two documents is you have made changes to paragraph 3A, and you have added paragraph 3D.
Right. And
Everything else is the same.
not exactly the same. There are a lot of Scrivener errors that I've corrected.
Okay, but I mean substantial changes.
As far as substantial changes, they're contained in 3A and 3D. Okay. Now, let me read through 3A and explain why I think that's necessary in any agreement with Neil if we're going to do that. I'm questioning whether it's really best, for our keeping this property, this belongs to the public. Should we be giving it away to Neil? Are we really getting something worth it, to us? He said 250, to build this road. I haven't seen any estimates about that. I've heard everything from 125 to 200, to put this in. But would it be better? We have right now NDC, building up that school. They should be putting in this roadway. And why not ask them to be doing it? They have equipment for, the contract, but it wasn't put into the original contract, which was a great oversight by this district. It should have been taken care of, months ago, if not a year ago. And now Neil comes in and says, well, I'll build it, but it's not for free. You have to give us this 50 by 370, for which the district has not even provided us, how much is that worth. So I think that the board right now is blind and shouldn't do it until we get that information. But let me go back to 3C, or excuse 3A. The language here says, Neil shall pay one for the Stantec design. They're the ones who did the engineering scopes that I'm looking, that we've looked at in the back. And permitting of a 50-foot wide driveway. Now, I call this whole 50-foot a driveway. Now, I'm not exactly sure, but that's language, from their agreement. It's not called a road. It's not called a private road. But they're calling it a driveway. You like to think, well, it's a driveway for the school, but really it becomes Neil property and becomes a Neil driveway. Okay.
Our construction department say, I understand that.
Okay, may I continue? I've been asked to explain this 3A, and I will continue. Thank you very much, Mr. Hope.
I had a question about your explanation.
Okay, well, I'm going to go through this, and then I will address your questions. Let me see. On this, permitting it for a 50-foot driveway, which includes A, continuous and uninterrupted sidewalks, curbing, and sodding from the Moccasin Wallow Road right-of-way for a distance of approximately 370 feet. Now, that figure comes from the drawings, that they will have continuous and uninterrupted sidewalks, curbing, and sodding. Now, the idea of having that uninterrupted, it's saying there's not going to be any cuts, from Moccasin Wallow Road, down to where there's a cutoff to go into the bus circle, okay? And there won't be curbs for ABC daycare here and XYZ daycare there to add traffic onto this roadway that we want for bringing students to and from Barbara Harvey School. And I'm just in continuous uninterrupted sidewalks, curbing, and sodding from Moccasin Wallow. This is that 50-foot right roadway for a distance of 370 feet to where the driveway connects with a bus loop to accommodate transportation of students. You with me on that? as featured in Exhibit C, and a 24-foot wide access roadway of sufficient strength and engineering for school buses as described in attached Exhibit D. Now, I say that because it's not really in the agreement. I mean, we have pictures and all that stuff, but it's not in the agreement that's being signed. And the agreement doesn't say, well, according to this drawing or that drawing, but it should be. And that's what I'm putting in here, what it should have in there. Attached Exhibit D, and subject to grantor's approval, which will not be unreasonably held, and shall construct, this again, Neil shall construct and maintain the driveway. There isn't anything in the proposed agreement from the administration and from Neil, put together by their attorney, that says they're going to maintain this road or driveway or whatever. But that the maintenance of that driveway is important for the safety of our kids. Maintain the driveway at its sole cost and expense with completion to occur prior to August 9, 2019, subject to force majeure. Time is of the essence. That last phrase is in the administration Vogler-Neal presentation. Now, other than the, quite a few, Scrivener errors, which maybe affect the flow, those are the changes which I propose, and I think that what this board faces, if it comes to a board meeting, is one, do you want to have, adopt the Vogler-Neal agreement that leaves out, I think, really important, crucial information, or do you want to say, listen, it's a lot simpler life if we hold on to this property? Let's go to NDC, you got the equipment, you know a little bit about doing this, call up Woodruff's and Sons. We know what we want to have, how to have it, and we do it on our property that we keep, that belongs to the public. We don't give it away to the Neals. We basically say, Neal deal, no deal. And if we do that, we will we continue to have control of that property. We don't have to worry about any kind of access into the roadway. I think our children are safer, not even have to think about it. And if sometime later on, if the Neals, now the Neals, good people, I work with them. They've done a lot for this district, a lot for this community. I'm not trying to put them down. But our duty is to the children in the school district. It's not to do, favors. It's not to.
Are you finished describing?
No, I'm not.
the
I'm sorry, Mr. Hopes. I'm not finished. Now, it's the choices are, this, saying we're going to, build it ourselves, using NDC, who's building the school, and or three, okay, let the Neals have the property and not be restricted in language in the agreement. And that's how I see the issue that comes before us if we have, we put it on the agenda and vote, and for the public to decide if it's a Neal no deal, or we want to, and that we want to, just go ahead and use NDC or some other person to put in, or outfit to call up Roy Woodruff and Son to, build, this driveway, from Moccasin Wallow down to our, bus turnaround. Or we want to have something that, my proposal that has in it, I think some of the major concerns I had with this Neal Vogler, deal that's been provided to us. I'm doing this in light of what the Auditor General said we were supposed to be doing, looking at these contracts. I don't care if it's constructing a school, constructing a driveway, getting into deals with, companies that are, providing us, computer excellence and all of that stuff. We need to be involved. I don't apologize for that. So I appreciate you all listening. Mr. Hopes, you had a question.
Yes, I guess for starters, in line of the questions your fellow board members had, and I do hire attorneys around the world, is there a reason why you did not produce a red line version showing your changes?
Yes. It's a time and effort, okay? And
Time and effort to red line. Okay, that's fine, that's fine.
I've answered your question. Now,
And you answered it, you said.
I will amplify it again.
I don't need you to orally pontificate any longer. You
I'm
explained
sorry,
yourself, and you're
I hope
redundant.
I hope
said
you
the
will
same
take
thing
back
3 times.
those comments, Mr. Hopes.
Mr. Chairman, we all allowed you to speak quite lengthy and replicate your comments 3 times. I would like to ask why, at this late date, you did not work with our counsel for our counsel to prepare a version of the agreement with your desired changes. This road should have been planned a long time ago. It was discussed a long time ago. With regards to getting it built, if you had a way you wanted it to get built so that it was built when school opens up in August, that should have been dealt with months ago. But during a workshop, to bring an agreement that your office prepared without going through the legal counsel that we pay, the district's legal counsel, our construction department, they know what goes into these agreements. And according to this, they reviewed the agreement. And then you bring in, as the chairman, and granted, as an attorney, I don't know what your experience is with what percentage of your practice is land use, road development, contracting for civil engineering. But I do know that we have a construction department, we have a general counsel, we have a real estate attorney within the board's general counsel office that do have experience. I, like I believe my colleagues, made a commitment to the people of Copperstone that there would be an alternate entrance into that school that did not go in front of their gate. And the property you're talking about is outside of a 6-foot earth berm with grass on it that you won't even be able to see that property from inside the campus. With regards to students walking there, I'll remind you that the light and the pedestrian access to the school is along the Grand River Parkway. That's where the light is. That's where the sidewalks are. That's where the pedestrian traffic going into the school is supposed to go. And you're arguing over a sidewalk that has a particular type of grass at a place that is so far outside of the boundaries of the physical school, and it's delaying this road getting built. If you wanted NDC to build the road, you should have gotten a bid for them, come with a change order to the board, and got the thing built. We are getting ready to open this school August 1st.
Okay, you're repeating yourself. I will respond to each item that you said.
I don't need a response.
Okay, well, I am going to provide a response. I agree this should have been taken care of a long time ago while you were chairman of the board.
No, I did. You were the one that altered it.
No, I didn't. But you were chairman of the board until, late November. Nothing was done, about this until about.
That's not so.
Well, I'm sorry, and quit interrupting me, Mr. Hopes, or I'll have you escorted out.
You're welcome to continue your
Okay,
conversation.
thank you. What, about 6 weeks ago, I asked the superintendent, how are we doing on this roadway? She looked into it. Nothing had been done. Nothing had been done while Mr. Hopes, was chair. He wants to throw it at me for coming in late. Well, after I asked that question and she looked, well, the most we got was this Neal deal put together by Vogler. To my knowledge, that I'm not aware of the administration or construction, going to NDC and saying, okay, if we amend the deal to how it should have been when Mr. Hopes was chair, to add in this, I'm not aware of that occurring. Believe me, I have suggested that administration, talk with NDC and Ron Allen about doing this. So to say that I'm neglectful in not bringing it up is just totally false. Now, The other accusation was going around or not trying to contact, board attorneys. In fact, on Friday, I talked with Steve Dye, okay, about everything in this 3A that I'm talking about. And if these issues are going to be addressed, they needed to be put down in writing before you do the deal. Now, Mr. Jim Dye, I was told, was not available at that time. I had called for him, he wasn't there, and I was put in touch with Jim Dye. To say I didn't try to do it is false as well. And if that wasn't going to be done, I took the time, effort, and my expertise, which has been over quite a few years, and I think some of you know I've been a doctor of law since 1974. You don't have to call me doctor or anything, but I've had a little bit of experience practicing law and real estate and all sorts of things. And for Mr. Hopes to say, gee whiz, you're just some kind of dumb a lawyer, or imply that, is, I think, out of line. I think I've addressed it. Now, Board Member Golden, you have a question.
Yes, sir, but it is a question that I'd like to direct to Mr. Dye.
Sure.
Attorney Dye, on the last page of the document that was prepared by apparently Attorney Vogel, it says that the document was approved as to form, and I think that's your signature.
Correct, yes.
Okay. Would you share with the board what that means?
Well, what it...
I'm sorry, I didn't ask that right.
Yeah.
Did you do a substantive review or an analysis of what was contained in the development agreement?
Mr. Chairman, Reverend Golden, the document was prepared, the terms of the document were prepared between the Neal Camp and the school board's construction services department, the terms, the general outline. The first draft of it was prepared by Mr. Vogler, the Neal attorney. It was provided to construction services. I was provided a copy. Everybody has fingerprints on the document. Both teams, both camps have some influence in how the document works or looks. I will say that Mr. Vogler provided the first draft, and probably a great deal of his work is in this. Some of the school board's boilerplate language I put in there regarding public records, for example. When I signed it as it's correct as to form, what that means is that it's a legal document. Whether it meets the school board's needs, that's a policy question that gets kicked over to the school board and with the administration's recommendations and guidance as to whether it will scratch the itch that the school board has.
The reason I ask that is because I have reviewed both documents side by side, and the only language difference between the two documents is, as the chairman has said, with respect to paragraphs 3A and with respect to paragraphs 3D. And let me say that I thank you for taking the time to do the due diligence that we've already come under scrutiny for not doing in the past. And this comes up often. This almost came up the last time we met with respect to another agreement that was before us that had not been reviewed. So I thank you for taking the time to review the document that was presented and that has been approved as to form, which in my opinion still leaves us with the unanswered question yet, because I've not heard that, and that is whether or not paragraphs 3A as revised by our chair and 3D as revised by our chair, if that makes this a better document for the school board or not. And I would want to hear that from the people who crafted this on our behalf, and I think that's construction services. Now, if I might paraphrase here, having looked at 3A and looked at 3D, in essence, the difference is that the former document describes a 24-foot wide roadway, a driveway, I'm sorry. And the latter document prepared by the superintendent describes a 50-foot roadway. And those who know a little bit more than I know about roadways and driveways, every driveway has a larger roadway. It's a road bed, and then you put a driveway in it or a road in it. So that is the essence of the language that he's trying to bring, because all this first document does is gives us a legal transfer of 24 feet of property. The latter document prepared by a chair gives us a 50-foot transfer. It's not a 50-foot transfer. He didn't say 50-foot wide?
May I respond a little bit, Mr. Coleman?
I just want to be clear because
Okay.
it says here that there's a 50-foot wide, I'm sorry, driveway. I said it backwards. The 50-foot wide driveway, which includes A, a continuous, and then it says B, a 24-foot wide excess roadway. That's what you have written here.
May I just make a comment? 3D, the specific language in 3D was drafted by Board Attorney Jim Dye. I had drafted something very similar, and he made it into better language for 3D. I'm just saying that because we heard remarks earlier saying, gee whiz, I didn't talk with the board attorney about any of this.
I understand.
Okay.
I'm not concerned about any of that,
Yeah,
but
okay.
I'm first off, I'm on 3A.
Okay.
And 3A describes a 50-foot wide driveway, which will include A, continuous and uninterrupted sidewalks, blah, 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 blah. And then it goes on to say B, and a 24-foot roadway. So I'm just comparing apples to oranges. I don't see a difference here between the 24-foot and the 50-foot, except that we are about to transfer 50 feet over to Neal, which, if what our chair has put in here is sufficient to get the things done that he thinks we ought to have done. So I would like to hear from somebody in construction, not law or any other related field. I want to hear from somebody in construction as to whether those two paragraphs make this a better agreement for us or not. That's just yes or no. And I'm only talking about 3A and 3D because those are the only two paragraphs that are different as between the two documents. Because we can keep going round and round about how we got here and how long it took us to get here. That's where we are now, and we got to do something. And I just want, for me to make a decision, I want somebody to tell me, from a construction standpoint, it's better to do what we agree to do in Attorney Minor's document, or it's better to do what Mr. Vogel has suggested. That's all.
Board Member Golden, maybe I can, by means of explanation, 3A, again, was an attempt to put into words what was strongly implied by the exhibits attached to both agreements, but not incorporated into the agreement specifically of the administration. In 3A, I say the whole 50 feet wide, 370-foot parcel of land is going to be called a driveway. And it would, and I say in there, it'll be 50 feet wide, 370 feet long. And going from Moccasin Wallow, to the bus loop. And I say that they're going to pay for the design, they're going to pay for the construction. I say that it's going to include uninterrupted sidewalks, curbing, sodding from Moccasin Wallow, down to the bus loop as set forth in Exhibit C. And it'll be sufficient for buses. I don't see what's wrong with that. What we add in there, language, and I specifically talked with Jim Dye about this, who's going to do maintenance? Well, shall construct, and we say, shall construct and maintain the driveway as its sole cost and expense. We make that very explicit. When you do a deal like this, it's better to have it explicitly stated and understood before later on, well, I understood differently. With completion and the other language about occurring by August 9th, subject to force majeure, that's language, from Vogler.
Mr. Chair.
Okay, that's there.
I'm not.
Okay, let's hear from.
Yeah, because at this point, all we have are board members discussing a proposed development agreement. And all I'm asking is to hear from our people that we have paid to answer that one question for me. Is this a better agreement with the changes that the chair has made with respect to paragraphs 3A and paragraphs 3D? Yes or no?
That's tough to answer as a yes or no.
I beg your pardon?
That is difficult to answer as a yes or no.
Do your best. Just do your best. Help us all.
Okay, let me explain. Both of these transfer a 50-foot wide parcel.
Okay?
Okay? Doesn't matter if it's staff's or Mr. Minor's. 50-foot parcel, the driveway or road, whichever, it's semantics, but it's 24 feet wide. It's got the type F curb, which is 2 feet. That will also carry drainage through it, or water flow. It's got sod and it's got a sidewalk on one side. I believe I heard Mr. Neal say earlier that he would not agree to Mr. Minor's language where it says that it's a continuous curb and sidewalk. Let me look back at this. Continuous and uninterrupted sidewalks and curbing. And Mr. Neal is saying that he would agree to 2 cuts.
Thank you. So what is agreeable to the other side of this document is not what's before us.
Correct.
What's before us is what is not agreeable to them. Okay, thank you. Now I just have one more question. In this posture, do we have anything to decide with respect to either or both of these agreements? What are our options?
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Dye.
Yes. My understanding is that the older of the 2 documents, which does not include the chair's changes, is agreeable to the Neal camp.
Okay.
Okay. As Mr. Penley has said, and Mr. Neal has said, and Mr. Vogler has said, the Neal camp is not agreeable to paragraph little d, 3D. That was communicated last week. They said they would not agree to that. I don't think they've seen 3A. I think that's new to everybody. As to how that makes the board's decision as to which one to go with, there is nothing wrong with taking a run back at Neal and say, would you give this additional thought? We think it is a better deal for the school board. You can certainly do that. But the early indication, or the most recent indication, it's been twice, is that they will not agree with 3D, and they have not seen 3A. So, now let me, this is one point I want to say. You were talking about whether it's a 50-foot or 24-foot. As Mr. Penley said, the legal description of the parcel to be transferred is 50 feet wide under both agreements. Okay. The 24-foot comes in, is that would be the improved roadbed, was 24 foot wide. I do think, and Mr. Miner can speak to this, as it's his document, his language, what new 3A does is adds a little bit more detail. Under the older agreement, the design was to be created by Stantec, the engineering firm, and both the school board and Neil use Stantec, so they are loyal to both parties in this thing. They were going to design it and submit the design to the school board for approval of the design. But the approval, I think the language says, is not to be unreasonably withheld, which is standard language.
Understand.
Yeah.
Then I would like to conclude my remarks by saying, in the present posture of what we have in writing before us, when we move to the meeting and the agenda, my motion will be to table this. And I think that we need to do something, particularly given that time is of the essence, and that we will have something that has been produced that is satisfactory to our staff and to the people that we're trying to reach an agreement with. That's where I stand now.
Mr. Dye, I have a question. Maybe this is unfair, but you, I don't think you have any problem with, the wording in 3D, since you drafted it, as far as meeting legal requirements. I'm getting at, you had voiced a opinion as to form this prior agreement, or proposal, let's put it that way. Is it unfair to ask if you'd say this, on my representations and what you have before you, that this would be legal as to form too?
Are you talking about 3A as to form? Is that the?
Well, yeah, 3A and, yeah, you already said 3D, I guess, because you drafted it, but,
Well, when I look at it, you look for certainty, that the two parties can read the language and say they each know what they're supposed to be doing under the language. And I think when looking at it that point of view, yes, I don't have any objection to it.
thank you. Okay. Board Member Kennedy.
I'll be super quick, because I think now that Mr. Neal's back in the room, we could possibly, before the meeting tonight, because it seems like we're just stuck on a couple of details. But because both documents say time is of the essence, and if Reverend Gold's motion to table this is successful, I think we need to hold a special meeting ASAP for this item, because the longer we push this back, we're not going to make that August 9th school opening date. I just want to make one point about Mr. Miner, you have an objection to that there's been no appraisal produced of that piece of property. It's 0.42 acres on the far eastern boundary of this school property. Even if we cut the price of the road in half and call it $125,000 to build this road, I think that's still a pretty good deal. I don't know, I'm not a real estate expert, I don't know what acreage is going on for in Parish right now, but just eyeballing it, it seems like, generally speaking, it seems like a fair swap to have this road built in time for the opening of school. But my big concern is getting this done, because we made, as Dr. Hopes mentioned, we made this commitment to Blackstone. I've been watching too much Game of Thrones. Copperstone, that we would remove some of that traffic from 115th Street. So time is of the essence. So my request, if we can't get this thing hammered out before the meeting starts at 5:45, and this does get tabled, which I'm not suggesting it does, but if it does get tabled, we need to meet about this ASAP to get this thing done by August 9th. That's just my 2 cents. So.
Thank you, Board Member Kennedy.
I actually had a lot to say, but in light of time and the fact that I know we need to get ready for the board meeting, I'll just wait until it sounds like it's going to get brought back up.
Oh, yes, it will.
Okay.
So.
Well, we're down to 3.
Yeah.
Let me just respond. Mr. Kennedy, I share your feeling about, and that's why I was asking for it, some time ago, and encouraging other discussions. How long would it take, to get an appraisal, of this property? I don't know. going to be, I'll ask our, property construction department, how long would it would take to get an appraisal of this property?
Everybody's busy, so getting an appraisal on this is probably 6 weeks. This is a very small job.
Next question is, why didn't we ask for it before?
Because I know for a fact.
What?
I know for a fact that the improvements being put on here are more valuable than this property. And we're not required to get an appraisal.
Okay. But we're talking about, giving property that belongs to the public. It has a significant effect upon the safety of our children, and we could keep it ourselves and build it. And we didn't, get some outside opinion as to the value. Okay, I wish you had.
I can provide some additional information if you'd like. The last property that we bought, similar property, we paid $60,000 an acre. This is 0.42 acres. You can do the math. That's what, 24,000, 25,000. The Mr. Neal has said 250,000. We had our contractors and engineers look at just the drive on site, and a swag for that was 159,500. That does not include a sidewalk. It does not include if you look at your Exhibit C, there is a turn lane on Moxon-Waller Road that Neal is building, not at our expense, but I suspect if he doesn't get the drive, then he's not building it, because it only would serve us.
Okay, what would be the value in dollars to Neil to have this property?
I can't answer that.
Well, I guess that in negotiations, that's pretty important to know. And why I say that is, what kind of, businesses, can he put in, to 50 foot, by 370 that he acquires, Neil acquires. It adds to that value. Okay, well, thank you very much. Any other questions, comments?
I only have one comment, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Am I correct, because you all know I'm new here, so I don't know what all went on beforehand, but am I correct in saying that the drawings for this school that were supposed to have been done years ago was supposed to have included this driveway, and that in fact the construction does not do that? Is that why we are here or not? That's not true.
Well, I'll just speak for myself. I certainly assumed that when, drawings were put up, for this school, and because of some of the things that Mr. Kennedy said, that there were representations, I think, made by the Neals as well as the district, that we would make efforts to have another ingress and egress to the school, that this would be included in the plans that we, construction plans that we entered into with NDC Construction. And I was very surprised, disappointed, shocked that it wasn't. Does that answer your question?
I don't know. I was just...
No.
Answer that. As part of the permit process with Manatee County, this drive did not exist.
Thank you.
The approval for this project, that did not exist. At that time, the county, the school district, and the Neals agreed that it was a better solution, a safer solution, to have that as a future access point. And we delineated it as such in dashed lines on the permit drawings. So as a future drive, it was not ever included in the scope of work for NDC.
Why wasn't it?
Because it was not required for the permit.
Okay.
It wouldn't violate it, would it? I mean...
It wasn't designed. We didn't have a design. It was always designated as a future drive.
Why didn't we design it? We needed it.
That's a matter of opinion.
Okay.
Well, I think everybody says we need it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. All right, I think we're all through here. we'll all be back here at 5:45. Thank you. Okay, adjourned.
Did you see?